OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's bang on 7:30. It's Thursday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's just Ger Eoin with you this morning. How are you?
Very well. What's the crack?
Not much. Quiet. We've got like the most decorated footballer we've ever had in the studio is coming in today. 3-time Olympic medal winner, a World Cup winner, playing with Shelburne now.
Yeah, it's a hell of a story.
I was trying to think if we ever had anybody who's had. We had Ruud Hullet in studio once.
Yeah.
That was like definite.
Show me your Olympic medals, Ruud.
That was yeah. Have we had John O'Shea? Would be the only one I could think of with like as many high quality medals.
Yeah. In this actual studio, I don't think John O'Shea has he been in here?
I think he might have been once.
Okay, yeah, so that definitely counts. He's a contender.
Yeah.
So
After that, I don't know.
A lot of people with a lot of appearances, but few to match the trophy haul of Heather O'Reilly.
Are we counting Roy Keane being at the Borgosh Energy Theatre as being in studio?
Well, I mean, I think the clue is in the question there, you know. Possibly. I mean, then there's your winner, and obviously his co-presenter on the night, Gary Neville, would be in that rarefied air as well. Obviously,
forgot about him. Yeah,
fair
enough.
He was a pretty good footballer.
There's big news coming through from the GA world. It looks like Davy Fitz. So this kind of bubbled up yesterday. There's more of it today in the papers. Davy Fitz is not a shoo-in, but is in advanced negotiations around the Waterford job.
This is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is something that maybe you wouldn't have seen coming at the end of last season, even though it looked like Liam Cahill to Tipperary was going to be something that could easily have happened when you were thinking about the possible contenders to go into the Waterford job. We maybe hadn't really associated Davy Fitz with it, but it seems like he's willing to go back to the job he had between 2008 and 2011. For whatever reason, in my head, it kind of feels like that 3-year period was a lot longer than 3 years. It feels like a significant.
Does it?
Period
I would have said actually it was shorter. I didn't realise it was the full 3 seasons. I kind of thought it was a quick in, quick out.
I kind of associate Davy Fitz with a lot of those mid-2000s teams. I don't know why. Like John Milan, I think Davy Fitz, and obviously famously Davy Fitz versus John Milan after that as well. But it just wasn't the case. Like, I mean, there was that team came through under different management and kind of made their mark under different management. And maybe you could make the case that Davy actually got the tail end of that great Waterford team as opposed to being there for the peak of it. Like, you could say that 07 maybe was the peak of that Waterford team, and maybe they just started to tail off after that.
Or 04.
Or 04 if you want to go back a little bit further before Kilkenny got really, really good. So his, just kind of on review this morning, I'm not sure, do I associate him with like an unbelievable level of Waterford success in the 2000s? So maybe he's going back with a feeling that he's got a point to prove himself to the people of Waterford, that he can even do better himself with the bunch of players that he'd have at his disposal. There's definitely, and like, I mean, I think it's probably James Gale who's made this comparison with Jose Mourinho, is it? And it's not necessarily always a negative thing that once you get Davy in, you're hoping for success within the first couple of seasons, because sometimes, and this happens with a lot of managers to be fair, things just go stale and there's like radical new ideas that sometimes just run their course over the course of 3-4 years. So he is coming in to win the All-Ireland next year, and at worst the year after. It's like that is what Waterford, I believe, will think they can get, because they've been to an All-Ireland pretty recently. They felt that they were going to be the ones to dethrone Limerick at the start of this year, so they feel they've got something good going on right now, and you could do a lot worse than bringing Davy Fitz in to try and win right now.
How good are Waterford? That's the thing we don't know, because after the league we were like, oh, okay, all right, this looks good mostly, and then flat, completely flat, like they train too much for the league, they're taking the league too seriously, or they stop believing. Like, remember, I don't know if you remember, the team leaked and everybody said, oh, something's wrong. I was like, that's not a big deal. And then it turned out something was wrong. Something had happened. Didn't seem like that big a deal, but obviously people had been hearing stuff, and so something had gone wrong. I don't know, it's like it's a strong-willed group of players who, pardon me, have a big reputation and haven't lived up to the reputation. So maybe Davy Fitz is exactly what they need.
Yeah, the reputation is to win an All-Ireland. Is that what you're saying? That their reputation needs to be consistent contenders to win an All-Ireland?
Well, their reputation is that they're like a preternaturally gifted group who have within their capability a level of hurling which is as good as anything that we've seen, but they have yet to deliver that in the big days, particularly against Limerick, particularly in the Munster Championship.
and this year was like desperately disappointing for them. Like
I think we've overrated Waterford in recent years, and we fall into this because they're so good to watch.
Yeah, like what I always think is, like, when you talk about like the very, very gifted bunch of players that they have, that's true. Well, and what are we basing that on? We're basing that on the fact that they won an under-21 All-Ireland in spectacular fashion a number of years ago, and that number of years has now clocked up to the point where those people should be top-class seniors. Like that Limerick under-21 team that won in 15 and 17 has now translated into All-Ireland success, All-Ireland dominance. In the middle of those 2 years, Waterford were the team. So those players right now are of the same age as the Limerick players who were winning all round them. You've had Tip and obviously Clare within the last 10 years winning under 21s and then going on to win All Irelands as well at senior level. So it kind of the questions that kind of remain are around, you know, some of those great Cork underage teams that are still a little bit too young. That'll come good over the next few years. But then there's also the question of Waterford in 2016. Does that team ever get its senior All Ireland medal? I think the hope back then was that they would be able to do it, and they've had their opportunities, and this year it felt like was going to be the opportunity. And I don't know, like what happens if Waterford do live up to the league hype this year? It's hard to
Then we have
like,
a great championship.
It feels like a ridiculous question to ask, but like if we just imagine that was real, that the league form was real, in a way that maybe like Kerry in the football's league form was real, and they end up going all the way. Like, could they have been stylistically a good contender to Limerick had that form been real?
I don't know, but we
Or
would
is
have
it just
seen
totally
them,
fake?
We would have seen them play a lot. Like
Yeah.
we would have seen them potentially play in a Munster final as well. So, like if you think about it, if Davy goes in and has an impact next year, you have Clare riding high, you have Tipperary with their new manager who just was the Waterford manager,
Yeah.
spicy. You have the 3 in a row All Ireland champions, and now you have Waterford as well. And who knows what's going to happen with Cork? But like, that's going to be good.
100%, and Kilkenny are just coming off the back of running Limerick really close under new management as well. And they
Kilkenny and Galway can kind of ease themselves into it unless we see something good from Wexford. It's a handy enough situation to be in. You guys go over there, knock the shit out of each other, and we'll be here going, oh, maybe we should like take this easy because we're going to play again in the Leinster final.
Yeah, kind of.
Let's not kill each other, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that would be a good agreement to.
There'll be a
come to.
handshake between Derek Ling and Henry Shefflin for sure.
A
A warm embrace.
Or maybe not. Maybe that would be rather extraordinary if there wasn't one. Like we talk about under 21s, like Kilkenny are current champions of that grade, aren't they? So in the next few years, Derek Ling will be hoping to transform that into an All Ireland senior success as well. So kind of in the All Ireland picture, it's fascinating. But like a strong Dublin in Leinster would make that very interesting. It'd bring it back to what was it, 18-19, when we had that dramatic final day. I think Leinster can still go there, and I think a lot of Kilkenny people would tell you to kind of like F off with your, you know, Munster are the best provincial.
Oh no, I'm
championship
not.
in
I'm
the
just
world
saying
sort
that
of theory here.
it's great. Well, like obviously Limerick are the best team in the country, but not by much. It turns out.
Yeah.
Kilkenny are pretty close to them, and on their day, I would expect Galway to be pretty close to them as well. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's far more competitive over this side than it is this side, unless there's some radical improvement in Dublin's fortunes, and unless Wexford find a consistency, which they have been unable to do in the last 2 years.
I think Wexford are going to be strong next year.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I think they will be. So it just comes down to me to Dublin, and whether or not they're going to really put up a fight in those 3 games that are going to define their season next year in Leinster and make a championship out of it. But yeah, Munster is obviously fascinating with all the managerial changes as well, and like it does feel like this time of the year though we get very excited about the following year's championship, and only sometimes does it live up to the hype. But I think maybe if we were having this conversation 12 months ago getting excited for this year, I think the excitement was probably well placed.
All right, so you're a fan of Davy to Waterford.
Yeah, I can see why they've arrived at this conclusion, because they believe that they can win next year.
Who do you want to manage Dublin?
I don't know who's in the mix for the Dublin job. I don't like it. I mean, this is kind of like a question that's kind of come out of left field here now. I hadn't really considered the.
Derek McGrath?
Is Derek McGrath in the mix for the Dublin job?
I don't know.
I know that he's done work in Wexford, obviously, with one of the clubs in Wexford, and has
And Laois, I think, at
and
one
Laois,
stage.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
So
He'd be good. It's a fair old jaunt from Waterford to Dublin, although the train is grand.
it's fine. Everywhere to Dublin's fine. Dublin's like a very well served urban centre.
Yeah. If everywhere to Dublin's fine, Dublin to everywhere's fine.
Everywhere's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody should stop complaining about the travel. Obviously Eddie Brennan would be no.
Yep, possibly in the mix as well. Like, I mean, these are the contenders that probably would have been like forming a shortlist had we been thinking about Brian Cody stepping away, and obviously none of those things actually materialised whatsoever. So the list is kind of long as your arm, really. But I suppose Eddie Brennan's kind of the only one of those ex-Kilkenny legends that is up for a gig, as far as I know. Like, I mean, Henry Shefflin's spoken for. David Herity is spoken for. Who else is in that? DJ Carey was mentioned last week, and I guess he's IT Carlo still going on, isn't it?
It looks like Mikey Carey is going travelling for the year. That was on the back of one of the papers. So that's not an immediate start that Derek Ling would have been looking for, somebody who's been very good at that. If you're a hurling fan and you want to have a say on this, let's hear from you. 087 9180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Or of course you can get us at Off the Ball AM on Twitter. We're back to Vicar Street. It's the first time we've been in Vicar Street in a long, long time, and it's going to be sensational. It's a celebration of women's football. It's a celebration of Arsenal. It's pouring over the coals of what's going on at Manchester United with Michael Owen, and we'll also obviously have some Liverpool chat with him as well. So it's Ian Wright, Michael Owen, Emma Byrne and Karen Carney are going to be our guests, and the proceeds on the night from the ticket sales will go to support women's football in Ireland. In grassroots football, we're going to be buying gear for women and girls teams. OTBSports.com/events is where you can get your tickets. It is next Wednesday, August the 17th, and it's going to be absolutely massive. Tickets are flying out for that one, so make sure you get on it right now. Right, here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. Ooh, the power rankings, the final power rankings of the season.
It wasn't really, we didn't do a lot of power rankings this season. It wasn't a very power rankings season.
Well, that was because Kerry were winning and you would have been having to talk up Kerry every week. That's because you were just doing your bit for the Kerry Mafia. Bought and sold, Sheahan. That's what I'm saying.
They were number one for the entire year, to be fair.
After that, at 8:10, Graham Hunter is going to join us for You Had to Be There, which is our new regular slot, which is where we talk to people who were supposed to be working at events but were so transfixed by what they saw that they remembered why they fell in love with the sport that they cover in the first place. Sports pages at 8:30. Ciara Mageean is going to join us at 8:50, fresh from success at the Commonwealth Games and heading into the European Championships. Heather O'Reilly, as we've been talking about, multiple gold medal winner at the Olympic Games and a World Cup winner at 9:10 as well. And then we're going to hear from Dan McDonnell about everything that's going on in the world of football at 9:30. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. Interesting stuff in the papers this week from Tomás O'Shea, who we all thought was going to just be a shoe-in for the Offaly gig, but isn't going to take it in the end. He's been talking, maybe he's gone back to punditry, but he's been talking about the advanced mark and essentially agreeing with the premise that we had on the show the day after the All-Ireland football final when Owen wasn't here, that it's bollocks, that it's basically turning the game into Australian rules. I have some quotes from him here. Every team that has a good man inside is going to do well with it. Even if you don't, you can still be cute to make the most out of it, and you don't need to be lamping it from the half-back line. It is not part of our game. It is not our game. It's like a free kick, and the back has done nothing wrong. I still see confusion among players in matches when they don't know if it's a mark or not. Different referees referee it differently. Read the room was what he was saying. Get rid of the advanced mark. Now, you think, I mean, this is interesting. This is somebody from Kerry who obviously just benefited from it massively at a key moment in the All-Ireland final when they were a bit under the cosh in that first half. They lamped the ball to David Clifford, who's like a cheat code at this. I don't agree with Clifford getting 2 marks in the first half of the final, says Kerry's Mark O'Shea. Paul Gainey got 1 too, and they all went a long way to Kerry winning it, because without them they were struggling otherwise. Being at the game as a Kerry man, I was saying great when they got those points, but it is wrong and it was unfair on the go-away backs. This guy knows what he's talking about. One of the greatest footballers of all time.
Mm-hmm. He is, yeah, he absolutely does know what he's talking about, by and large. I don't necessarily agree with it though. And like I feel myself standing on the beach here, and there's like a massive tide coming against me, and I'm about to go out without any sort of armbands and try and swim against this tide. But I actually think the advanced mark is okay. I think the advanced mark should stay.
Hot take. Straight in with a hot take.
That is as hot a take as you can possibly get on the advanced mark. I think the advanced mark should stay. I think
because you're good at it. This is just pure Kerry bias, right?
I think that
we've got this guy. You're not going to change the rules. It's like this is now how the Dubs fans felt when Cluxton was like kicking the ball, and it was like, oh, you can't do that. They're going to change the rules just as you get good at it.
No, I don't think it's like. But I think there's an interesting point that you made there, right? Actually, that the reaction to Cluxton completely transforming a position was, oh, these guys are winning, let's try and find the rules to try and knock it. I think that this will become a topic of conversation because the team that have just won the All-Ireland have benefited from the advanced mark more than any other team. So I think that'll intensify the conversation around it, because when a team's on top, there will always be a conversation about to knock them down. When Limerick won their 2 in a row, it was like, how do we get rid of water breaks? Paul Kinnerka's got a whiteboard, therefore water breaks need to go. That's what happens when a team wins. You will try and find ways to change the game to ensure that they don't win the next year.
Okay, one quick point is that Tomás has been against it from the start, in fairness, so he's being entirely consistent.
No, I'm talking about you. I'm talking about you and Nathan the morning after the All-Ireland. Literally, the first thing he said the morning after the All-Ireland was the advance mark needs to go. How do we stop these guys from winning next year? So it's not about Tomás, it's about you. This is personal.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm fairly sure I was against the mark. I'm not a huge fan of Aussie rules, right? I never warmed to it. I think our sport is better. I understand that.
I agree.
It's going to make me sound entirely parochial, but I prefer our version of the sport to their version of the sport.
So do I.
And we're like, no, they've got loads of great rules where if you cynically foul at one end of the field, it's like a free kick. It's a gimme free kick up the other end. I think that would transform our game. There's loads of other things that they do that we could steal from, but this one doesn't make any sense to me at all.
The thing that I have most of an issue with is the level of hyperbole that is around the advance mark, like saying that it's just like transforming the game into Aussie rules. Like I think Jim McGuinness back in 2020 was saying that the advance mark is a disaster for Gaelic football and is killing the art of defending. And like that's my point, is that that's the tone around the advance mark, that this is this stain on the game that is absolutely destroying the game. And I can see the issues with it. I can see that when a player gets the ball on the 45-metre line and pings a 20-yard pass to his right and it's into the chest and he's in acres of space anyway and that gets a mark, I agree that that's not great. So that's why I'm lukewarm on it rather than saying this is the best thing ever. However, Graham O'Sullivan gets that ball on 3 occasions between the semi-final and the final, and he looks up and he sees David Clifford. Before the advanced mark comes in, I'm not sure he's kicking any of those 3 balls. Like, he was on that same show with you the morning after the All-Ireland saying that Jack O'Connor encouraged him to kick more this season. And I'm like, that's great, brilliant. Cornerback comes up with the ball and he's not doing the classic thing of making the safe pass. He went to kick the ball in. He had the bravery to work on his kicking and to kind of work on the mentality that's involved in going route one. And they did it, and it worked on 3 occasions in the Dublin and the Galway game for them this season. And that happened because of the rule. And I think that's a positive thing.
Did it happen because of the rule? Because if you listen to James O'Donoghue, Jack O'Connor was mad for kicking the ball. He was always about kicking the ball, always about the diagonal ball in. Like, I don't think that... when did the mark come in?
2020 was the first year.
Okay. Listen to Paddy Tally this week. Jack O'Connor's mad for kicking the ball. Like, that's a thing that he wants them to do anyway.
Yeah.
Why would they not have kicked the ball into David Clifford, who may then have been creating a goal opportunity as opposed to slowing the game down, tapping the ball in his toe, taking his time? And we're like, well, this is fairly obvious he's going to kick it over because...
Well, let's talk the goal opportunity thing first of all. I think that what we've seen this year in Clifford's game is a movement away from the wild goal scoring opportunities that he manages to create by dint of the fact that he's got the ball in his hands. Now, what we saw at the end of 2020 after the advance mark was brought in was David Clifford being this far away from scoring one of the best goals ever in a Munster Championship against Cork in the rain. And what he should have done is pop the ball over the bar. So what's actually happened there is that David Clifford has been told, I presume, you need to stop doing this. Yes, you're going to score an unbelievable goal every so often, but we need to keep the scoreboard ticking along, because if you'd taken your point that day, maybe Kerry wouldn't have got dumped out in the Munster semi-final. So I think that's actually what's after happening, rather than this being some sort of reaction to the advance mark. Now, are you telling me that the big ball going into David Clifford and the high fielding and the kind of like the bursting out of the pack of Galway forwards and plucking that ball out of the air isn't a phenomenal thing to see? I think that's a brilliant thing to see, and it's not just the Kerry players.
But why would he not still do that?
Because what'll happen is it'll be a bounce pass to a corner forward. Like, it's the type of kick pass that the advanced mark requires, which is no bounce. And if you've got the ball outside the 45, you've got a sea of Galway people in, you've got to go high with it. Now, Jack O'Connor loves kicking, but I mean, without the advanced mark, the kick pass could be a bounce pass in front of the corner forward.
Or it could be the diagonal ball that James O'Donoghue seems to have.
It could be as well, but I'm not convinced that Graham O'Sullivan kicks that ball in on those 3 occasions without the advance mark.
And okay, but so those 3 times in the however,
can I just give one more example?
160 minutes.
Yeah, but one other example. Paddy Small in the Dublin Kerry semi-final. That was an unbelievable moment, the mark that he catches, where he's like sliding into the ground to catch it in his chest. If the advance mark doesn't exist, it's like, let it bounce into me, turn around, like whatever happens next.
Pop it over the bar, hand pass it to somebody running through, and there's a goal chance.
No, he's got to like it probably gets gobbled up by a defender or something.
Maybe
I don't know
not.
what happens next, but either way, my point is that because of the rule hasn't led to a muting of exciting moments. I think it's actually helped to create some exciting moments that we ordinarily wouldn't have had. And it's not just Clifford. As I say, Paddy Small had a brilliant one. Now, I accept that there's a whole host of ones that happened, especially during the league, where guys are picking it up just outside the 21 in a wide enough position and they're free and it's popped in. And I don't know how you fix that. That's not great. I accept that. I can't defend that. But I just think that the whole backlash to the advanced mark has just been a little bit overblown. The whole idea that it's like destroying, that it's a disaster, that it's killing the art of defending, or that level of language around it, I just don't think is I don't agree with it.
Why do we need it? Why do we need it?
We need it because there was a preponderance of short passing that was slowing down the pace of attacking in Gaelic football. That's what I believe. And the people were harking back to the Jack O'Connor days where they would lump a ball in on top of Kieran Donaghy. And what had happened was that teams had reacted to that and was like, well, this is pretty easy to defend because you let him get the ball, then you go in when he's on the ground. As soon as he comes down, you're at your most vulnerable.
And what happens is the game evolves and good coaching comes in and better attacking play happens. And
good coaching comes in and then they're like, don't kick the ball in.
The best All-Ireland finals that we've ever seen, Dublin and Mayo didn't have the advanced mark in it.
Like where did that argument come out of? Like,
the point is that the game evolved. So people complained about Donegal arriving with their whatever it was, right, and killing the game for years, and everybody copied it. Bad club team, bad club coaches, because everybody can put 15 men behind the ball.
Yeah.
And then slowly the game responded. Dublin had their wide V formation where the midfielders end up in the two corner flags, and suddenly teams don't know how to defend this because there's a basketball influence, and it literally produced the best football we've ever seen.
Yeah, it did.
We didn't need the advanced mark to produce the best football we've ever seen. However,
I'm not saying we did.
Clowns in clubs around the country and bars were like, "Jeez, we need to get the advanced mark, we need the mark. They have the mark and there's the rules and it's great, they'll high fetching." And then
what accent was that? Can you put like a pin on the map?
No pins. Yeah, no pins.
It's like Cavan meets Tipperary.
No.
Don't share a border.
It's inside your head. It's the voice inside your head.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's your inner monologue.
The 2017 All-Ireland final would not have been affected by the
I just see it and teach a car. It's great.
The 2017 All-Ireland final would not have been affected by the advanced mark. It might have created.
Could have been ruined. Who knows?
It could have been improved. Who knows?
Could not have been improved. These games.
But your point is just complete. It's a complete red herring. It's like there was a great game that existed once upon a time.
Not once upon a time. Literally in response to the problem. The game had evolved, but at the same time, the rules makers were 4 years behind going, this Cluxon's taking short kickouts. How do we stop that? It's terrible.
So what they did was they came up with the midfield mark, which has been a success. I don't hear anybody complaining about that.
I happily do without it, right?
Would you actually?
I actually would get rid of all the marks.
I think that's improved the game.
Whatever. Okay, I'm not a complete refusenik on this. If you want to keep the midfield mark, keep the midfield mark. But the advanced mark and the defensive mark, play on. It's a game. We're playing. Don't stop the ball. You're not the referee. You didn't play the whistle. There's no whistle. It's I put my hand up and I'm I'm the king of all I survey. I stopped the game. Look at my works, ye mighty in despair. I might take my ball and go home now. What? Play the game.
There are moments when it is kind of ridiculous where the game just gets stopped. But then on the flip side, I do believe that there are teams who are screw it. There's a big upside to my man inside catching this ball, so I'm going to kick it in. And the encouragement of that long kicking into the full forward line, I think, is to be.
What happens? At some point, somebody's going to kick 6 marks in an All-Ireland final, and it'll be and it'll be the winning and losing of the game. We'll be is that really what we want?
Do you know what'll happen here? Is it say if we put this through an alternate universe generator? If the advanced mark came in next year, and we were having this argument in 5 years' time, you'd be like, Shane Walsh played really well in the 2022 All-Ireland final, and there was no advanced mark back then. And it would be as just a ridiculous point as you made about the 2017 final.
It's
that look at Shane Walsh thriving and playing one of the greatest individual performances in an All-Ireland final we've ever seen, while the advanced mark exists. But these two things can coexist. Great free-flowing open football, and also the sort of unlocking of a full forward who is being surrounded by a million opposition defenders. These two things can both work in unison with one another.
I see the point that you're making. I think that the game had already evolved beyond the requirement for the advanced mark, and so we brought this rule change in, and it has completely altered the texture of how teams are playing in a way that I don't think adds to the spectacle in a meaningful way. You think him coming out and catching the ball is great. I think him coming out and catching the ball is great. I'd love to see the damage that causes, where that long ball takes out whatever number of defenders, and suddenly there's 2-on-2 inside. But instead of us seeing the excitement of what might happen, the goal chance, the scramble, the save, the goal, we're like, it's a free kick. And everything slows and everything stops, and he kicks the ball over, and the defence is already reset, and it's like, okay, the defence, you get a double advantage because you can build your press knowing he's going to score that. We're already in our defensive formation. It has a knock-on impact to the next 3.5 minutes of play, and it slows the whole thing down. And what we want is high pace.
What would happen is the high ball goes in, they see a dominant full forward who is most likely going to catch the ball. They're like, right, let him get it. As soon as he hits the ground, all 4 of us are coming around him, we're swallowing him up, and it'll be a free out. That's what will happen.
If there's 4 of them back there defending this one player, then there's space out the field and the long ball doesn't get kicked in. And the game had evolved already to the point where we were seeing really exciting football. So you didn't need it. But occasionally, when you can counter-attack and you can hit that long ball in, you hit the long ball in and the goal comes off it. Whereas what's happening is the forward is deciding, I'm going to play the percentages, take my point, take my time, use this mark to get into the game or whatever it is, and I'm not taking the goal opportunities. I think Kerry would have scored goals off, maybe. I think Kerry would have at least created goal chances off some of the marks that they've made. But you don't need to try anymore because, as you say, they're not conceding goals. They've got a brilliant defensive structure, and if they score 17, 18 points, whatever the figure Jack O'Connor had in his head was, we'll be hard beaten if we score this number. Was it 20 points? Might have been less than that. But that's actually, we're going to see a chased game where it'll be 20 points to 16. And it's a good game, but it's kind of bloodless.
I still think, though, in a bloodless / chased environment, goals are at a premium, and they're still a massive incentive to the team. So, I think that a lot of those marks that Clifford would have got this year would have been in situations where he turns around and there is like a wall of bodies between him and the goal. The other thing I just want to say is, like, when McGuinness was talking about this in 2020, he said it would make sense if the kick was outside the 65. Then you would have a booming ball, and then the other rule, you've got to catch it over your head. So this is some of the stuff that's been said about it in the past by people who think that the advanced mark is a disaster. That it's not, like, if he's saying the advanced mark is a disaster, and also saying it would make sense if the kick was outside the 65, then it can't be a disaster. It's just 20 metres away from being something that works. So, it just feels like as I said, the tide is coming in, and everybody's like, this is crap, this is awful, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, and I'm just not sure that it is, to be honest.
Okay. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, Leader Kicking are hosting American football kicking events across Ireland this August. This is a brilliant competition, right? If you want to be on the pitch at the Aviva at half-time kicking, then we have the thing for you. So in Dublin on the 13th and 26th of August, in Galway on the 14th, in Cork on the 20th, in Limerick on the 21st, and in Belfast on the 25th, there's a kicking competition where you can go and see if you can kick an American football. And this is for males and females aged 16 and above. The first one is on this weekend. So what are we at? Today's the 11th. So it's this weekend. And the first one is on out in the sports campus. The prize is return flights for 2 to Chicago and tickets to a Northwestern American football game. And the search is for Ireland's Kicking King. This is all organised by Tig Leader, who was part of the kicking competition that we did last Monday in Vincent's. I didn't hear who won yet. Do we know who won between John O'Shea and Shane Walsh?
It was probably just Tommy.
Well, that's the rumour is Tommy Rooney actually won, even though he wasn't taking part, apart from his very short John Maughan-esque short shorts. Have you seen the photographs? If you haven't seen the photographs, go and check them up. So other prizes include free tickets to the Aer Lingus College Football Classic and an opportunity to kick at half-time in front of 50,000 people at the Aviva on the 27th of August. To take part in the event, click on an event near you to sign up. So we'll share the social for that as well. It's 7:59. Up next, it's time for Owen's definitive 2022 football power rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
that like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
There you go.
Yeah, we're just doing it on the contenders for next year. So is this like a 2022 power rankings, or is it actually like a little bit of a 2023 power rankings? I think it's probably more the latter than the former. And I've just put together like the 12 contenders on this. So
Who didn't make the list?
Meath and Cork.
Right, fair enough.
Maybe Meath will be a contender.
Well, Colin O'Rourke is already like, who is this fella? Who is he?
Yeah, good question. Nobody will be able to tell him the answer to that. And Cork as well, obviously, famously, who have liked to talk up in the past, maybe just they don't make the top 12. Like, I mean, it's not exactly, again, a very, very hot take. Very lukewarm stuff so far in the GEA for this morning. The power rankings, number 12, Roscommon. Number 11 are Clare. Number 10 are Kildare. Number 9, Monaghan. Number 8.
Does it change depending on who the manager is?
I've factored into, it could change if they get a very, very good manager. Like if Jim Gavin comes out of retirement and like a zombie version of Jim Gavin's in charge of Monaghan, then straight to the top of the power rankings.
What if Jim went in as number 2 to J.O.?
That would be interesting.
Wouldn't it?
If he ever comes back into football, that could be the role that he would slot into.
He's done everything, right? And there'd be less pressure, less amount of time, none of the logistics. You're just showing up and imparting some wisdom.
Could Jim Gavin do the Pat Gilroy thing of going in with the hurlers? Just let everybody else do the hurling coaching, and he's the mastermind behind it all.
Maybe.
That's
what you'd be doing if you were the Dublin County Board, wouldn't you?
Or like, I mean, we were talking with Davey earlier. Like, I know he had been loosely linked with Dublin. I don't think there was any much substance to it, but that could have been a good shout either. The Dublin hurlers, basically, that's the next attractive gig. Where were we? Donegal are in at number 8.
Does that depend on who they get?
It does. Like, Donegal is an interesting one where they've had so much disappointment over the last 10 years, really. And I wonder, does this year sting as much as any of the others? Like, so 2020 obviously was bad when they lost to Cavan in COVID, but I still think no matter what would have happened, I think they get beaten by Dublin anyway.
Yeah, but they put up a good game.
This year, though.
And that was the Dublin team, as we now know, that was on the wane, that was like
it still
on
beats
the
Donegal.
fumes.
It still beats Donegal.
I think they do. I think they do beat Donegal, but they get a much better game than they did against Cavan.
My point is that this year, Donegal, they get the extra time against Derry. They don't have. A lot of people have said they didn't have like the balls to go for it late on. Like, I mean, they had the ball in possession. They had the ball in their hands and didn't get one last shot off.
Yeah.
In normal time, wasn't it?
Which was the criticism last year of Derry.
Yeah. So they should basically. I think Donegal people will think that they had every opportunity to win that game.
And everybody was fit.
Everybody was fit.
That was the big thing. Have we ever seen McBurty and Murphy playing together, and McHugh and all these players? And this year we did. We saw what they were capable of, and
their path to Sam was Clare, Galway, Kerry, which I think is actually an easier path than what 2020 would have been. Beat the Dubs. I don't think they do. So I think this year could have actually been the one that stung the most for Donegal, and I don't think there is a team in football at the moment that has such a chasm between its floor and its ceiling. And unfortunately, they've been closer to their floor than their ceiling too often. So this is a team at number 8 in these rankings who could be looking up at Kerry and thinking,
we're not that far.
We could knock them off their perch if we got them in a knockout game next year. And it maybe seems ridiculous to say that in the context of this year, but that's the talent that they have.
What did you think of Paddy Tally's point about this? I don't know if you've all heard the football pod, but Paddy Tally, brilliant interview with Tommy, James, and Paddy on the football pod this week about his own career, and also just kind of really looking forward to next year where everybody is on the same rota of games once they get through the provincial championships. That at that point there's no advantage and there's no disadvantage. He thinks it's actually better for Kerry to have more regular games.
Yeah,
I also would be concerned about, it's like, oh, wait till we see, but actually they're going to benefit from the games because they need those games, and no more undercooked.
Also as well, Kerry, that's where the Munster champion, being in the Munster Championship, will really benefit them, because they'll get their one seed. They'll be more likely to get their one seed than Donegal will, for example, or somebody in Connacht. Kerry and Dublin will probably be number 1 seeds, but then on top of that they get the same games in the All-Ireland series as the Ulster and Connacht teams, so it's a win-win for Kerry and Dublin, I think, next year, that new system. Donegal, they got pipped at the post really by Mayo at the end in 2019, so it's hard to know how that'll benefit them. And Mayo could be a team that will enjoy that, and they're in at number 7 in these power rankings. I think Mayo could do well in that new system next year. I've put Tyrone in at number 6. So I think this is probably where these are not 2022 power rankings, because I don't think Tyrone could possibly claim to be a top 6 team on the evidence of this year's championship, but I don't think you can possibly claim that they can be that bad again next year. Now the thing is the reason that they were so bad the people that walked away from the panel. and there's no reason to suggest that many of them are going to come back next year, or is the reason they were so bad is because they went on holidays late and it's hard to do back-to-back All-Irelands. I think it's a bit of both, but I think the second factor is a factor.
I think it's more likely the hangover than definitely the strength and depth wasn't there this year that they had in previous years, but I suspect that Tyrone club football is good enough that they'll be able to find a bunch of young players who will come in absolutely mad keen to influence it. Now, whether or not the team who won the All-Ireland still has the same desire, that's the question that they have to answer over the course of the winter, to do the hard training and to show up and be like as emotionally invested in winning an All-Ireland now that they've done it. If they can get that back, then I actually think a lot of people come out of that game going, they're a shit team, aren't they? They don't really deserve to win the All-Ireland. I disagreed. They beat a Kerry team who I think are a really good Kerry team in the semi-final, and they just handled their business.
I agree with that, actually. I think Tyrone, I was not saying that afterwards. I thought Tyrone were a very, very good team.
Really well coached, beautiful footballers, really smart on the ball, heads up, athletic, incredible bench. That was definitely something that was noticeable. So I'm not writing Tyrone off at all.
The question for them next year is, does Rory Canavan start, and does he come straight into proceedings as a superstar forward in the way that some former under-20s have done pretty much straight away? He looks like he might be able to. He looks like maybe he's naturally just a little bit bigger than Dara, not as tall, but just maybe early in his career able to hold off a shoulder maybe a bit more. I don't know. I've only kind of seen him play for his county at underage level this year,
which was pretty good.
It was absolutely sensational. So if he comes in and he is ready, that's a caveat. If he is ready next year to be a starter in that team, then I think that transforms our season, and we can speculate about what managers might come in, but we know that this guy will come through for Tyrone next year.
Yeah, and obviously it's the under 20 age group. If it was an under 21 group,
you'd be more certain.
Definitely, but even just to get more of those players through. But all of a sudden, those players are now going to training.
And he was there this year at the very end, so he's got a sample of it.
But his teammates as well are bulking up the numbers, and that's where their strength and depth is going to come from. They might not all be ready for it, but they might be ready for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they're certainly ready for training.
And we've seen what the impact substitutions did for Tyrone in winning that All-Ireland last year as well. I've kept Derry ahead of them at number 5. Obviously they hammered them this year. I'm not sure if that's going to be relevant going into next year, but I'm not sure if I'd subscribe to the theory that this is going to be like a one and done year for Derry. I'm not sure they're going to win back-to-back Ulsters, but I still think it doesn't matter. I think that everything they'll have taken from this year will have been huge, and it still feels that they were ahead of schedule this year as well. I think I've actually just stolen one of Paddy Andrews' lines. I think he said that multiple times in the football pod, that winning an Ulster was probably ahead of schedule for them this year.
I'm not sure. I think that we would have thought much higher of them if they'd had backdoor for the last 2 years. They would have had more games to show us exactly what they were, and they'd be further along in terms of their attacking structure. I think that in Rory Gallagher's head, when he sat down the first day he got the job, he was like, I'm going to win an Ulster within 3 years, and then they've done it. I think they think they're on schedule, and I think that they were hamstrung by the lack of games over the COVID period. Actually, I again also think that there's development to come from them. I hate comparing them with Donegal, but it's such an obvious thing, the speed at which they got there. Donegal got there a bit quicker. Donegal had better forwards at the time. But we'll see. I again would be very confident. I actually think they should be ahead of Armagh.
Yeah, so Armagh are in 4th, and Armagh and how close they came to Galway, I guess, is probably informing this a good bit. But also the thing about Derry, and maybe the ahead of schedule take, is probably based on the fact that they're going to be playing Division 2 football again next year, whereas Armagh are a bona fide Division 1 team at this point, and they've established themselves up there, and they're them getting close to an All-Ireland semi-final this year made sense with everything we saw in the spring, whereas it felt like Derry, not sure that they overachieved, but it definitely kind of was a bit more of a surprise. So I would be backing Armagh maybe to just go that bit further than Derry next year, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was completely wrong on that. And Armagh will feel they could have got to an All-Ireland semi-final, and on their side of things, they probably might have felt they could have beaten Derry then. The thing is, Galway Derry, there was only 4 points between them at the end. I kind of have it in my head that it was this complete blowout, and it maybe felt like that at times, but was it 4 in the end? Maybe it was 5, but it wasn't anything major, and I think that it's not terminal when you look at the gap between those teams next year, which brings us on to team number 3, which is Galway. The Dubs are in at number 2, and then Kerry in at number 1. I'm not sure what you think, but would most people have Galway as number 2 just because they were there in the All-Ireland, or do we think Dublin actually would have their number?
I don't know. I think so much depends on who is playing for Dublin and who is managing Dublin. I think I'd be very surprised if Pádraig Joyce walked away, right? It hasn't been confirmed. I haven't seen it confirmed that he's staying, but I think I'd be really, really shocked if that was to happen. But you wouldn't be shocked if Desi was to walk away at this stage. And you wouldn't be shocked if he came back either.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't be. And like I guess maybe it kind of feels like he's been there longer than Joyce, even though he hasn't. And like maybe the fact that he's got over the line in All Ireland, and I don't know, like there's so much talk around Dublin next year as well, with regards to some of the players that could come back into the side. So
who, like you talk Mannion?
Mannion.
I don't think Mannion's coming back.
You don't think he's coming back?
Well, he's never made the sounds of like he wants to go back. He's made the sounds of a man who's enjoying his post intercounty career life.
Yeah. Okay, fair. But Con O'Callaghan will, let's hope, be back.
I hope so, but Con's fitness is never guaranteed. Like because he's such a highly tuned athlete, you get injuries, you know?
Well, let me just put it this way then. Dublin being at number 2 is based on the fact that Dublin's forward line will be better next year than the one that played against Kerry. And if it's not, if it's the same forward line that played against Kerry, you might make a case that Galway could be ahead of them. Like, that's how pivotal those positions are for them. Like, I think Dublin's defence was actually outstanding at times in that All-Ireland semi-final. Like, James McCarthy with one of his best games, and obviously there was some brilliant man-marking jobs done in that full back line. So it's just that scoring forward from open play that Dublin need to nail down next year. And unfortunately, when you've got a generational talent who's been on the sidelines for so long, their entire possibility of success is going to distill down to Con O'Callaghan again next year. It's going to be deja vu.
All right, that is the final episode of the Power Rankings.
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
Right, ahead of our Carbery FC Roadshow on the 17th of August, we're going to be deciding on the top 5 most influential Irish players in both the men's and women's game. A reminder that tickets for the show in Vicar Street are on sale now. Ticket proceeds will go towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football. Check out otbsports.com/events for T's and C's and more. We will see you on the night. After the break, it's episode 3 of You Had to Be There with Graham Hunter's selections. During the ads, though, you're going to hear from Leona Maguire speaking to our own Aisling O'Reilly, reflecting on her top 5 finish at the Women's Open last week. Women's Golf on OTB is in association with KPMG, proudly supporting women in sport. Back after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The best rugby insight and analysis.
When you watch a guy, Ger, standing on the sideline counting players with his fingers, you know this is bullshit.
OTB Sports Rugby.
We talk about having to give Carbery and these players more time, but even if we give them more time, they're not going to hit the level that Johnny is hitting at and what he brings out of other players.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
You're always trying to finish off every event as strong as possible, and I felt like I was playing really good golf, really solid all week. Just had to be patient and wait for my chances to come, and thankfully they did on Sunday, and always nice to finish with a bogey-free round, whether it's in a regular event or a major, and even nicer to do it in a major.
And with links golf, is there, I suppose, it mentally challenging, that type of golf?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you couldn't switch off from Muirfield for a second. There was the wind obviously, and navigating around the fairway bunkers, and all the different bounce and whatever. So there's a little bit extra on those weeks, but that's just the challenge of it. I quite like links golf. You have to be a little bit more creative, picking your targets and picking your shots, but don't get to do it very often right now, but nice when we do.
And what would be the difference here today at the Galgormer for the week?
Yeah, different test this week, getting the ball in the air a little bit more, sort of higher flight. My 9-wood had to come out of the bag last week for the lower shots. It's back in the bag this week. So yeah, rough is quite juicy out there, so staying on the fairway this week is going to be key, and then just trying to give yourself as many chances as possible. The greens are running really nice, so they're definitely quite a bit faster than the last few weeks. So I think it'll be a really enjoyable test this week.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh, really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie, we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match. Because somewhere out there, there's someone for you. And GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
Right, it is episode 3 of You Had to Be There. The simple premise is you're at an event for work and you fall back in love with the sport because you're witnessing something amazing. I'm very excited about this week. It's Graham Hunter. Graham, how are you?
Well, equally excited, and I've been listening to your chat about the Dobbs. I've been listening to the adverts there about sandals and socks. It's a very witty station you work on. I do love this program, and I'd pay to be a listener. Never mind, just come on and talk about great games of football. Nevertheless, here we are, and I'm ready for whatever you've got to throw. And Bosnich doesn't get a mention. I'm sorry.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe just because you weren't at the game. I mean, obviously, if you had been, you might.
Could be. I've had some moments with Bozzy, but anyway, let's reveal the picks.
Okay, right. You can keep those for your book. Alex Ferguson in 1999 at the Champions League final. This is your first one. So obviously, people will be familiar with the fact, and maybe there are some younger listeners who aren't. But Bayern Munich are winning the game in stoppage time, and Manchester United scored 2 late goals to win it in Barcelona at the Camp Nou. And you could have picked a load of different people, I suspect, from this. Why Ferguson?
There's a little bit of bias, but also I was answering when one of your colleagues, one of your team came on to me. I was answering the idea that, because you introduced it by saying it's a very simple concept. I don't think it is, because if you are asking people who are fortunate enough, privileged enough to be paid to be at gigantic sports events about moments or individual people or game, it takes a breath away and makes them go, yeah, look, this is what it's all about. This is why I love the sport. This is why I'm in this profession. When you become overwhelmed and taken to a different place, then I need to deal in the fact that, I'm the Daily Mail's chief reporter that day. I'm at Camp Nou. I followed Manchester United in all their competitions towards a potential treble, to the Camp Nou, to a city where I love. I'm not yet planning to live there, but I'm just the stadium, the Camp Nou is phenomenal. And to me, he's still subconsciously, but it emerges during the game, particularly in the latter seconds, he's still the Aberdeen manager. There's no Scholes, no Keane. I've been in Turin for the semi-final and seen a club and a fan base who were remorseless. They were impermeable, unbeaten, applaud Manchester United off the pitch in Turin. But they go there without 2 absolutely central players against an equally remorseless team that people forget. Bayern Munich were tilting for the treble too. Had they won that night, they had one domestic trophy still to win, which they did go back and win. It was their treble. And, he plays Beckham in midfield to try and cope with the absence of Keane and Scholes, but also to finally answer what Beckham's been tugging at his sleeve for months. Boss, I'm a better central midfielder than I am at the right. And what happens is that, this tired, pretty drained squad that doesn't perform, and no matter what Alex Ferguson has said subsequently about we were always on top. I always thought we were playing. People have exaggerated how much Bayern could have won it by a street. Manchester United didn't represent themselves particularly well. But he juggled. At that stage, it wasn't simply the gambler's instinct that was going to see him through. He juggled options. He eventually moved Beckham back to the right. He eventually gets Sheringham and Solskjaer on, not to add to Cole and York, but to supplant them. And he frees up Schmeichel. Maybe it seems obvious to go on his big rangy run up to the box, because everything then is, it's all or nothing. And I'm sitting there, having seen Alex, having known him individually, having seen him do special things for my club where you're like, I'm not quite sure how or why this is happening, but it keeps happening around Alex Ferguson. And that night in the Camp Nou was overwhelming because of the noise, the heat, the fact I've never been at a match, reporting on a match which potentially could bring a treble for anybody before. It seems to be gone. You're under terrible pressure to be writing 1,000 words. You're asked to file all 1,000 words 15 minutes before the final whistle. So the newspaper has everything set, the words, the headlines, the pictures with about, setting it takes 5 minutes. So 10 minutes before the end of the match, it's Bayern win the treble, bad night for 1,000 words. And Bosch, Ferguson, when Steve McLaren, we don't know at the time, but you can see the activity in the dugout when Steve McLaren's going, great, extra time, stop playing for extra time. I don't know what's going down in the dugout, but what's patently clear is that Manchester United, from top to bottom, starting from their manager, are like, never mind. It wasn't just on the touchline, it was on the pitch too, because of everything he taught them, everything he'd imbued in them, the type of player he bought. Every single player in red were like, we're still time to win it. We will win it. And they did. And it wasn't a fluke. And it wasn't because Bayern collapsed in football terms. And it took me out of, I was doing my job, which felt pressurized. It felt a big responsibility. In the end, what I did in the minutes from Sheringham scoring, where you're starting to rewrite and you've got people screaming at you from London saying there are cities that won't get this edition of the paper unless you're typing and you're thinking and you're watching, and this bit's off the record, so if you can cut this out. There's a tear. I can't see the screen properly because bear with me, the Aberdeen manager is about to win the Champions League. That you asked me about a moment that takes you out of, it's just a job, I'm working here. And the combination of that witch's brew was as powerful, as impactful as I've ever been present at in anything in my career. It subsequently genuinely did change everything about my life because of who read the report that I wrote. But it was about Fergie, coping, reacting, everything that he'd taught people over the years of being their leader, their monster, their sergeant major. And it was just simply a moment of transcendental pressure, magic, beauty. And I don't really expect to be present at anything like it again.
That's the forging of diamonds, I believe. They talk about pressure situations like that. And so you just slipped it in casually there. Who read the report that changed your life?
Well, I don't know that anybody's listening's going to be interested, but Vic Wakeling was head of Sky Sports, and he was at the game, obviously producing the event for Sky. Way back in his career, he'd been a print journalist, so he told us a couple of months later when he had a big dinner for all the football correspondents at the beginning of the new season that he'd got up, got his breakfast at the Princess Sophia Hotel at the top of their street leading to the camp. Now went to the airport a bit glum, a bit forlorn, because he expected to pick up the first editions of British newspapers in the airport to read Bayern win the treble, or Bayern take the treble away, United flop and that, because often in the past, for those who don't remember it, if things didn't happen soon enough for first editions of newspapers, then many match reports were just completely wrong because the print button was pressed and the lorries rolled so that far-flung places could get an edition even if the sport was wrong. And he told me, and in front of my colleagues, that he went to the airport, picked up the mail. He happened to be a mail reader because he'd worked for the Mail in the past, picked it up, and he literally said that he was, as proud as he'd ever been of reading a British newspaper ever. Now, his values might be different from everybody else's, but he picked it up, and I had something about Manchester United last night producing the football version of turning water into wine, and the top 500 words that I'd smashed out in about 5 minutes, read as if I'd had time after the match to write about Manchester United's greatness. The headline was good, obviously, and the pictures had been changed to reflect Sheringham and Solskjaer. And he tapped me on the shoulder and said what he thought about that type of writing, and came after me and offered me work. And when I moved to Spain, he was the one who said to one of the people organising Spanish football, phone Graham and get him involved in Revista de la Liga, which led to a reason to stay in Spain, where I'd gone without any real language skills, maybe in English or Spanish, people might argue. No contacts, no money, no real prospects or career path. And Revista, when early in my first summer in Spain, Revista was a reason to stay and a possibility of doing something interesting, and it became something really rewarding and glorious, where I'm working in Helsinki now for the European, the UEFA Super Cup final. I'm working with people who are like, God, it's terrible. As a kid, I used to watch you, and I can't believe, and blah, 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 blah. I know, I can't, listen, I have to balance all this nonsense out with a dig at myself, otherwise it wouldn't be me. But, Jared, that literally was life-changing.
I think you came on here saying this was really difficult, but you've made it look effortless in terms of smashing it out of the ballpark with the first one. Okay, so we totally accept Ferguson in 99 in the Champions League final. That's a sensational bit there. Fran in 2004. This is going to seem hipster to people, but what's the story with this?
So, before Xavi and Iniesta in particular, and Messi reteach the world what I suppose Billy Brenner and Kevin Keegan had taught them, and John Giles early on. He was this little man, and he was slight, he was very small, and he was playing in this Super Depor side, whereby a completely regional, there's going to be a gratuitous mention of Aberdeen again, a completely regional, a fishing port far up the ferocious north of Spain, with a not particularly big population base, is ploughing its way through Spanish football. They've won the league in recent seasons. They've won the cup on the centenary of the cup day on Real Madrid's birthday in the Bernabeu against Real Madrid. And in this edition of the Champions League, they've progressed to play AC Milan, the reigning champions of Europe. Ancelotti's team with Seedorf and Gattuso and Pirlo and Shevchenko. You probably don't know these guys. It's a really Italian-based story. Sheahan and Kaká and all this kind. It's quite a good team. And I'd been in San Siro, whatever it was, 2 weeks before, where Deportivo La Coruña had led, and then Kaká in particular, but Sheva and Pirlo had just, as David Coleman would say, opened their legs and showed their class. And suddenly it was 4-1 against Deportivo La Coruña in Milan, and it shouldn't have been that, because throughout that game they put, and you kind of think in your head, well, whoa, all right, that margin's wrong, that scoreline is unfair, but maybe, football hierarchy is just shuffling, and the spine is just getting back into place. That's the way it is. And Deportivo La Coruña take them to the Riazor on a lovely night in La Coruña, up in Galicia, and from the 5th minute, when I think it was Pandiani who opened the scoring, they ran Milan off their legs. Spoiler, they win 4-0 to go through 5-4. But Fran is the little guy who padded around. I'm not saying he wasn't fast enough to say it felt like his feet never touched the ground, but he definitely padded around and went into little spaces whereby Milan, who were already looking at each other and looking to Ancelotti on the side going, what's happening? Because everybody else for Depor was just buzzing about and whirring. And the Riazor, which felt like a pretty old-fashioned sort of tin or corrugated iron-based stadium, people were banging on the corrugated iron. The stadium was jumping up and down. European champions were reeling. And at the heart of it was this little maestro who was just going, right, well, Milan are dazed and dazzled. I'm going to poke them and torment them and prod them, and then score the 4th goal when they're through on away goals, because those beautiful things existed in those days. So at 3-0 up, because they scored Milan, they're already through. And the brand just goes, show me where's the cake? There's the cherry right on top.
We love that Deportivo team here in Ireland because Shelbourne played against them in that Champions League and drew 0-0 in the old Lansdowne Road before it got redeveloped. And then it was 0-0 at half time in the second leg in the Riazor, and then Depor win 3-0 in the second half. So I think a lot of people...
That's frustrating for you, because it could have been Shells doing that to Milan. It probably should have been. So that's one of the reasons I raised this. Yeah.
Very good, very good. So Fran, it's also brilliant. Leo Messi. I mean, I guess the other thing that happens is that the world's focus comes to Barcelona, and you're right there watching this 17-year-old kid progress. Is the 2009 final the one that you've picked because that's his masterpiece?
It's out of the most difficult panorama to try and say one moment when Messi took me out of myself and said, look, this is why football's beautiful, why it's the best sport ever invented, why you love it, why this kid from 1963 is still childlike with enthusiasm in 2009. So to pick it and even to try and argue one night was Messi's masterpiece would be infantile on my part. But what probably hasn't come out over the 20-something years we've known each other is I'm extremely chippy. You know, it literally is what drives me. So I've been watching Messi for a handful of years. It was already clear in 2009 that we were talking about somebody with genius-like ability. But at that stage, irrespective of Spanish football being very popular in UK, and at that stage I didn't know the Irish scene quite so well, and I don't think there were as many doubters, but there was a raft of people in Fleet Street going, yeah, too much Messi. He's never scored against an English team. And they quoted, I don't know, six or seven incidents where, like, for example, although when he played Mourinho's Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in the mud, when Rijkaard's Barcelona won on the night when Asier Del Horno tried to remove Messi's leg with studs in about, you know, the area that he can reproduce children with, he'd been so outstandingly brilliant that night that whether he scored or not wasn't really the question. So going into the Rome final and going into Rome final where Manchester United probably got their team selection wrong, where Manchester United were still a really impressive 11. When it's Fergie, you're thinking, well, gosh, I wonder if Barcelona will wobble. I wonder if, having seen what happened at Stamford Bridge, you know, maybe this Barcelona side is a year or two off the. And that night, Messi loves the ball. It's boiling hot. We subsequently know, so I'm not claiming knowledge at the time, that the players are in pieces when they come out. Pep Guardiola has arranged a gladiator-style video of showing them all the tough moments of the season. All their kids and wives are in there to the gladiator music and all this kind of stuff. And in the dressing room, the players subsequently told us they're in tears. They come out, they're half beaten before they stand on the pitch. And for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes until Piqué and a bit of Valdez repel Cristiano Ronaldo from United taking the lead. From that moment onwards, there's heroics from, you know, a 3/4 unfit Iniesta and a 3/4 unfit Henry, and they scored the open goal without Messi's involvement, the opening goal. But he plays as if this Champions League final against a really good side is a mere nothing to him. And then he caps the performance with, I've often asked Xavi about what, you know, only 1-0, where they're distinctly superior, but only 1-0. You couldn't, the final can go like that against a Cristiano Ronaldo side. What did you cross the ball to Messi for? There's Van der Sar, who subsequently, the poster of that moment will show him looking, you know, with boggle-eyed, I can't even do an impression, where he's like, what's happening? And it's between Rio Ferdinand and Vidic, two towering, you know, monstrously big footballers. And this little Leo Messi, they could probably fit in their socks along the shin pads. And Xavi looks up and goes, I know what I'll do. I'll put it to the 5'7" guy. And he goes, well, he's the best header on the pitch. He's the best header in the club. He's not tall, but the natural thing was, if I had the ball on the right, I'd pop it over to him. And he gets up, and the ball's laid between the two defenders. How has he got that space? And he gets up, and literally, I don't care if you've got a geophysicist or some Open University professor of, you know, geometry. He shouldn't have been able to head it back over Van der Sar. It should have been physically impossible. But he does, and the moment is so special for him that his foot, the bones in his foot contract, like you often see, I'm sad to say, in car crashes where you see bits of shoes and sometimes clothes or glasses strewn over, where in moments of crisis, the musculature of the human body contracts. And Messi's boot just slips off because he's going, I'm going to score, it's the Champions League final. And he lands and picks his boot up in one movement and runs off, and you're like the Fran moment. It's just like crowning glory that night, and it felt that there you are.
We actually had the picture up there of him holding the boot, celebrating the goal. I had no idea why he was holding the boot. I didn't realise that it popped off. But the athleticism...
It literally just dropped off. And because I'm a little bit Celtic and I'm taught to do Celts, you get spiritual moments where you're like, aha, this was all meant. I suppose Xavi did mean it, so did Messi, so maybe that's tautological.
There you go.
Would he have crossed the ball if they were 1-0 down?
Well, listen, I'm answering for him because I haven't asked him that question, but really, given the number of times I've talked to Xavi about that, I'd say yes.
If there was pressure on Messi, which he obviously didn't really feel or display, there was a lot of pressure on the Spanish team in the 2010 World Cup final, because we had expected them to kind of win the World Cup from a long way out. What they were doing was picking up the trophy that we had ordained for them, I guess, four years previously when they didn't and could have, and then 2 years previously they'd emerged as this, okay, now we're here. And they was like, well, you have to win the World Cup now because you're the best team. But you've gone for Iker Casillas next in the 2010 World Cup final, where Spain beat the Netherlands by 1-0 after extra time. What was so special about Casillas' performance that night?
Well, I think people falsely remember it as not a terrific final because there's been so much build-up saying it's the Cruyff final where the Clockwork Orange, who are in the third World Cup final, surely will win one now. Surely they'll play better than they played during the tournament, because they'd attracted quite fierce criticism from die-hard, high-church football experts in their own country getting to the final. But once there, the idea was that if you unleash Sneijder and Van der Vaart and Rob and so on, they'll be great. And Spain have been growing and growing and growing from being defeated by Switzerland in the first match. No nation had ever won the World Cup, having lost the first match, so here they were. And a semi-final display against Germany, irrespective of what people think about the 1-0 against Portugal, the 1-0 against Paraguay, the performance against Germany, 1-0 only, that had been just a glorious, from me to you, from you to me, from me to you, game of football, back and forward with Germany going, right, we'll play you at your own game. And it was gorgeous to be there. And it was very entertaining. So I think everybody thought that it's ill-remembered because there were buckets of goal chances. There might not have been long stretches of extraordinary play, and I have no qualms about saying, although I don't think it was Van Marwijk that ordered them to go out and do it, amongst the Dutch players, they went, we will batter these little men, we will knock them off their stride, and then we'll win. It had been done to them, I think, by maybe German sides across all their club, the domestic careers, and all that. This is the way we'll do it. And it was a terrible mistake. It was really ugly. It should have been sanctioned by 3 red cards, in my opinion, not just one, although I would admit that there might have been a Spanish red card too for Puyol. But there were buckets of chances. And because of the way in which the Iniesta goal has been deified and the way he reveals his vest to pay tribute to Danny Harkey, a dead friend, and the fact that it's such a special goal and its construction built from one end to the other, it's forgotten that throughout the game Casillas plays really well. And Casillas also is, I'm on the pitch, throughout the match I'm given a pitch position to about 12 metres to the right of Spain's dugout. So therefore, I haven't often experienced a match pitch side, and you could reach out and touch or talk to the substitutes as they warm up. But it's the World Cup final. I've lived with this lot for 7 or 8 weeks. And Casillas is not only playing well, but he's keeping them believing, because at some stage, particularly in extra time, the players' legs have turned to jelly. They've talked about this a lot. There's a fear of losing. There's a fear of going to penalties. But the key moment is when Holland are 11 men and they're starting to break. Robin has been unable to shake off Juan Capdevila at Spain's left back, and he's come into the middle. And there's this moment where I think, by memory, I haven't gone back and watched it, I think by memory Sneijder is falling and snaps off a pass as he's falling, which catches Spain out completely. They're not only too high up, but the centre halves are too wide and the ball goes through. And it's Robin against Iker Casillas. The previous season they've been teammates for Real Madrid, so they've had this high noon Gary Cooper one-on-one stuff in training a lot. It's one of the things that's made Robin in those days a genuinely great footballer, because he allied finishing to pace. And as they're going through, it's the only time in my career reporting sport where everything has stopped. People talk a lot about, you just that feeling about it's gone slow now. And then it feels like slow motion. I genuinely, because there's so much wanted the people I've been working with to win the World Cup, I thought my heart was going to stop, literally stop. And you're watching it, I can't explain, it must sound stupid how it feels as if and he goes through and, 200,000 times out of 200,000, it should have been a goal. And Iker Casillas dives the wrong way. He anticipates what Robin's going to do, which is right foot bent to the keeper's left. And instead, Robin, I'm sure thinking I know what Iker's going to do, puts it to the keeper's right. And Casillas leaves out a leg, which we often see in penalties now, but he leaves out a leg, and it's the big toe of the upper boot, which must be his right foot. It's the toe. It doesn't even hit the face of the and it goes wide. And Robin sinks to his knees. And I've never seen, I saw in your earlier edition of Jonathan Wilson talking about the best, by a distance, without competition, that's the best save I've ever seen. It's another spiritual moment where you just go like, yeah, this is why I do this. This is why you run around countries carrying camera gear. This is why you're at 4 o'clock in the morning in some mad airport where the cops want to examine your stuff and the players are waiting and you're sweating and you're like 7-8 weeks away from you. This is it. And at the end of the game, I liked Iker, we got on well. At the end of the game, I got an interview with him one-on-one, and I just went, Iker, you and Arjun Robin, what was that moment like? And he just stopped and he went, big brown eyes, and it was eternal. I thought, that'll do me.
And so it has proven. I think, obviously, the context always matters with this stuff too. So to win the World Cup with the save, it's like, it's this, the striker gets the opportunity to do it, but he got it that time. Nice of Karim Benzema to know that we were doing this today, to score last night, to be relevant in the news today. But Benzema's form over the last year in particular has been sensational. So to bring us right up to date, in 2021, this is the game against PSG.
Yeah, no, I would have said it would be this year. I would have said
22. Yeah.
Yeah. Because look, there's a special place in my affection for Karim Benzema because I couldn't say that about everything he's done in his life outside football. But ever since I've seen him, which the first time I watched him was when Lyon came to the Camp Nou against Barcelona. They got hiding, and he was very, very young. But it was very clear that this was somebody who wasn't just an ordinary nine, that he could drift wide, that he was intelligent, that his use of space was good. And you thought, well, let's see how this guy develops. That's all I thought on the night. Interesting, nice to watch. At Real Madrid, he's been battered about. There was times when Mourinho didn't believe in him, where he had to go and batter down Mourinho's door to have an argument with them. As much as it's retrospectively recognised, nobody really thought of Karim Benzema as great because of the work he did for Cristiano Ronaldo, but he was. And then when Ronaldo left, he just went, brilliant, superb, centre stage, here we go. And scored and scored and scored and scored and led. And in this season, I said I'm in Helsinki, and therefore I've had access over the 2 days to to lots of players who played in that Champions League winning side last season. And they've consistently said, despite what they did against Atleti in Lisbon, winning an extra time after a final second equaliser, despite the quality of the Bale goal against Liverpool, despite winning 3 in a row, a large chunk of Madrid's side have said that was the most emotional win last season because of the nature of the mad late goals against City, against Chelsea, the final against a tough Liverpool side. But every one of them has said the turning point was Paris Saint-Germain. They played like stinking drains in Paris. They should have been beaten. Courtois was heroic. They come to the Bernabeu, and for a big chunk of time, not only does Mbappe score, but he looks like he could score 3. And it looks like they're out. And the reason I put this in is that when Colin was talking to me about this, and you mentioned at the intro about like moments to take you out of yourself, again, I've never in a football stadium done this, where I can't believe it. When you look at the short space of time that the 3 goals that Benzema scores take place in, it's a blitzkrieg. And this one that I picked, the moment, the performance, it's a hat trick. They go through. They all the Madrid players said that's the turning point where the Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool performances come from. Not just that they got through, but they were like, yeah, we can do anything. It's like they scored to go 2-0 up, and that could see them through. And Rodrigo comes on. He wins the ball from Paris Saint-Germain's kickoff, and I think it was Idrissa Gueye. I might be wrong. He gets hustled, and they break, and the ball goes down the other end, and it's Vinicius Benzema, and Benzema scores. It's about, I'd say, 110 seconds from his second goal, and the Bernabeu is just a phenomenal. I can't even describe what it's like, because you're there and they're a little bit arrogant because of everything they've done. They think they're going to go through all the time, and sometimes it's not like a library, but they're sitting there going, right, do something miraculous, not entertain us. We're waiting for the miracle. And this night the miracle came from a context of rubbish in Paris, pretty outplayed for 55 minutes in their own patch. I don't think the crowd believed, and then Benzema was bang, 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 hat-trick goal. It was just, and I literally, before I started working again, I was like, I don't believe what I've seen. And that fits into, it might not seem to an audience outside Spain like a transcendental match or moment, but it's in this because it fits what Colm said to me about just that moment where you're like, yeah, this is what it's all about. And you're transformed into a spectator, not a fan of either of the sides, but you're just there going, all hail football.
Yeah, Graham, I had very high expectations about this slot, and you've managed to smash those. Thank you very much. That was brilliant.
Lads.
It was so unexpected.
You had to be there.
Covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great.
You had to be there.
Nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it.
You had to be there.
Turns out covering football for 40 years leads you to see some amazing things.
Yeah, and covering one of the greatest football teams of all time and one of the other greatest football teams of all time also leads to some sensational things as well. So yeah,
that was class. Right, we're back at Vicar Street in association with Cadbury FC. A massive roadshow coming your way on the 17th of August. Michael Owen, Ian Wright, Emma Byrne and Karen Carney will be our guests. Some great stories, obviously, as we look forward to the rest of the season. It's a celebration of women's football. It's also going to be a celebration of Ian Wright's career and what he thinks of this Arsenal team. Pretty exciting at the moment.
I would say so, and I would.
Are you bringing your Arsenal jersey to get signed?
I haven't got an updated one recently.
Well, you don't need. You need a vintage Ian Wright jersey.
I do. I don't have a vintage either.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Need to sort that out. Actually, sorry, I ordered one off a certain website like last year, and it just never came.
Oh, right. Well, you got to get onto them and tell them it's urgent. You need it for next Wednesday night. Tickets are available otbsports.com/events, and a reminder that the proceeds are going towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football. T's and C's apply. We'll see you on the night now. At 8:46, John Duggan, good morning to you.
Ger Eoin, how are you doing?
What is going on?
Lots going on, lads. St. Pat's obviously involved in Europe tonight in the Conference League at Tallaght Stadium, 7:45 start against CSKA Sofia, 1-0 up from the first leg. Basel or Brøndby awaiting the winners in the playoff for the Conference League. Can Pats get through? Let's hope they can. Sligo playing for Pride against Viking of Norway. 7 o'clock start of the showgrounds, 5-1 down after the first leg in Norway. We had Real Madrid winning last night, the UEFA Super Cup, 2-0 against Eintracht Frankfurt. Chidoze Gbene on the mark for Rotherham against Port Vale in the EFL Cup. The golf beginning in Memphis this evening with Rory McIlroy, Shane Lowry, Seamus Power all on the field for the FedEx St. Jude Invitational at TPC Southwind. If you want to have a look at my selections, they're on otbsports.com for virtual insanity. We also have two County Antrim courses splitting hosting duties for the ISPS Handle World Invitational. So this is a tri-sanctioned event from the LPGA Tour, the Ladies European Tour and the DP World Tour, two separate men's and women's tournaments with Leona Maguire and Stephanie Meadow involved in the women's side. They're playing two different courses, Maz Reen Golf Club and Galgorm Castle for the first 2 days, and then Galgorm Castle for the closing 2 rounds. So Aisling O'Reilly's interview with Leona is on our social channels, well worth a look.
Niall Horan's involved in this.
Yeah,
he's obviously been busking on Grafton Street and hanging out in the pubs of Mullingar. I suspect he's going to be at the golf this week.
He's been in the last years. He's been heavily involved in an agency, hasn't he, about promoting women's golf and that kind of thing. So I'd expect he'll be definitely there. We've got 9 separate European Championships across all these sports in Munich. A little mini Olympics over the next while, starting today: athletics, rowing, cycling, canoe sprint, gymnastics, table tennis, triathlon, sport climbing and beach volleyball. So all 8 Irish rowing crews are involved in qualifying today. Paula Donovan and Fintan McCarthy, the Olympic champions in the qualifiers for the lightweight double sculls. Sad news as well about Peter Byrne. Anybody who's old enough to remember Peter Byrne is a brilliant sports writer, Irish Times soccer correspondent, athletics, boxing as well. 6 World Cups, 8 Olympic Games. May he rest in peace, passed away. Jack Charlton's official biographer, anybody who might remember Jack Charlton's World Cup diary, which was penned by Peter. So sad news as well, coming out yesterday.
All right. Good stuff, John. Anything else going
on? Not really. It's funny you talking about Arsenal there. I don't know why I did this to myself, but sometimes I just like put on a sports documentary. I watched 89, which is all about Michael Thomas and the game at Anfield. It's very good, very good. And Owen hadn't seen it, so it'd be a labour of love now for Owen to watch. But
and where is it available?
It's I got it on Sky Store.
Right.
Everybody's interviewed, the whole lot of them. Ian Wright, quite emotional, speaking about David Rocastle, and David O'Leary's interviewed. And interesting that David O'Leary won the league that night as a sweeper. Didn't know he played in that game. When Arsenal went to Anfield and won the league title against Liverpool with effectively the last kick of the season, with Michael Thomas scoring the goal. There's just an interesting anecdote in it. I don't know if I'm giving too much of a spoiler away here, but they got George Graham came in '86 and they got the 4 across the back, didn't he? He signed Dixon, Winterburn, Bold, and Tony Adams was already at Arsenal. But there was one moment where Lee Dixon, before North London derby, saw the lads looking at him in the dressing room, and he's going, "Oh, why are you looking at me? Is there something wrong?" And eventually he was pinned up against the wall by his own teammates and says, "This is the North London derby, mate. Make sure you play well today." So it's quite a fascinating anecdote from Lee Dixon just about the
tough love.
Ruled by fear.
Yeah, the intensity of it.
Things have changed a bit.
They have changed, and but there was one of the interesting things. But yeah, it was very well told. '89. I love all these. I watch a lot of these kind of sports documentaries about English football. There was one about Howard Kendall as well, and Everton in the '80s, and Maradona. Obviously, you can't get enough of them.
One last thing we didn't talk about. There was a thing in the papers yesterday about the Spurs signings. I didn't realise they're all big men.
Yeah,
they've had I don't know if it's a policy or if it's been accidental that everybody signed has been over 6 foot. They're going to be a team of giants.
Well, it's funny because they think Kulusevski, he thinks himself could be a number 10, but even when you see Haaland's movement the other day, you can't think, well, Haaland's frame, is that going to deliver the movement and the pace that he delivered? And what Conte wants is aggression. And he wants Spurs to be nasty. As much as you can be in professional football, and that's where I think where Spurs have been lacking. There's actually an article, I have yet to read it, about Paratici today in the I think it's in the Telegraph, so I'm looking forward to reading that when I get out of the studio here. There's been a complete overhaul in Tottenham's recruitment in that one of their guys left, the main recruitment guy left, and Fabio Paratici came in. They worked together with Conte back at Juventus, and actually they're telling Daniel Levy what the story is, which is usually the other way around, isn't it? If you believe what you see in the Amazon documentaries and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and look, the Paratici thing, obviously after the fact and everything's going well now, he's credited with turning Harry Kane around by making the point that if Man City really wanted you here, Harry, they would just spend 120 million, not the 80 million. They don't actually want you. That's embarrassing. Now, at the time, they had a manager who shouldn't have been in the role because he wasn't good enough for it. So I'm not sure if that's all a little bit retrospective. We knew what we were doing because they didn't have Antonio Conte as the manager. They had the opportunity to have Conte.
Yeah, they did, and they
turned it down. They got lucky.
Yeah, they got lucky that they realised the error of their ways, and for once Joe Lewis and Daniel Levy decided to spend the money, 150 million. Now maybe they weren't able to when the stadium was being reconstructed.
Maybe it's a fair point.
But now it's so, like, we're going to Chelsea. It's funny, my nephew was saying, look, can you get me a ticket for the away end? It's like, where am I going to be able to get the tickets?
Well, you put it out there, you manifest it.
Me?
A bit like Rovers in their flight.
Because he thinks they're going to beat Chelsea. This is a really interesting game. Like Chelsea, like Bailey, I was reading about Bailey, is heavily involved in these transfers. And it's quite amazing, really. Like Tuchel and Bailey just seem to be just splashing the cash. Like Aubameyang back to Chelsea. Imagine him scoring at
Aubameyang and Fofana still to come.
Imagine Aubameyang scoring at Arsenal this season and
De Jong
running to Mikel Arteta, and
that'd be amazing.
De Jong scoring at Old Trafford and running to I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's all to come.
Yeah,
John, good stuff.
Lads.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. More from John Duggan on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk from 1 o'clock. Now, I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Ciara Mageean, fresh from her Commonwealth Games silver medal in Birmingham and a season's best. Ciara, good morning to you. How are you feeling?
Good morning. I'm good. Waking up for my morning run, so thanks for having me on.
What is the story in the aftermath of something like that, where there's a medal ceremony and a podium? How different an experience is that, and what's that actually like to live through?
Do you know what? It's those little moments in athletics that are the little golden chunks, because I had a lovely message from Lizzie Lee after. I get on really well with Lizzie, and anybody who knows athletics, a good Cork marathoner. So she was like, enjoy yourself, and I was like, had said I know that it's not been the smoothest journey, and I was like, look, yourself, the good times are good and the bad times are bad, but they make the good times all the sweeter. So yeah, getting to do a victory lap and looking up, trying to find my parents and my aunt and my boyfriend in the crowd. Those are the little special moments. I actually had to take my mummy's trainers because they told me I was going straight to the medal ceremony, and I kind of was like, "Are you not letting me get my kit out of the mixed zone?" So my poor mum was walking about in her socks for a good chunk of the time. But yeah, it's something special. Getting to stand on the podium is always absolutely fantastic, and it's what I do athletics for. So yeah, on cloud 9.
And how long does that last? How long does the afterglow of that last? And do you carry it now for the rest of the season in some ways?
Yeah, like it's something that I'm kind of coming to terms with and trying to certainly appreciate those little moments more. I feel like in my junior career it was, yep, that's brilliant, park it and on to the next one. There is still that type of mentality with European Championships coming up next week. There's not much celebrating that can be done. So I got to see my family and give them some hugs, and then it was back to the village and get some food and try to sleep that night. And I found it very hard to sleep that night. Probably a combination of the excitement of it all, but also the caffeine that I'd had in my body and all the sugary drinks that you tend to take in the build up and the recovery after. But it's certainly been lovely coming back to Manchester and sharing the medal with my teammates here, and seeing all the messages from home. I've been blown away with the support. I think Portaferry's very excited. My parents were going down the street to get a newspaper and we're coming up hours later because they were stopped by everybody at home. So, you know, it's those little things that make me smile, realising that victory for me, which is obviously fantastic in my athletic career, it also means so much to everybody back home and to all my teammates here. So yeah, I'd say I'll still bask in the afterglow of it, but in many senses it's back to business. Like, straight back into training to get ready for the European Championships, and hopefully at the end of the season I'll be able to take a wee moment to enjoy this full season. I've still got plenty left to do, so I'm trying to enjoy it, but not too much.
Well, apart from the kind of emotional level of the enjoyment, and obviously that's all totally deserved and earned, is there, do you think, a performance benefit from a success like this, a confidence that helps you to actually just be a better runner and to run faster? It doesn't make any sense, because like physically you're not any better today than you were the day before, but actually having come through, is there something intangible that makes you now better when you're next competing?
I certainly think so. And even physically, whenever you're going through the rounds, like usually in a training week you wouldn't have a hard session and quite so close to a previous hard session. So to go from heats to final and with just a day in between, there always is a training effect physiologically on the body. So my body will take another little step forward. Like many athletes race themselves fit. It's kind of like a phrase that we could use, that people sharpen up and get fitter throughout the season. In many senses, your aerobic fitness isn't really improving, but you know, that race sharpness and that astuteness is certainly getting honed in, and I feel like that's certainly going to be a benefit for me from the Commonwealth Games, because having not been an overly fast race by any stretch of the imagination, I feel quite unfortunate to personally feel that I'm in really good shape, and I feel that I could run a PB right now. All of the 1500 metres that I've found myself in over this summer haven't been as fast as I would like them to be. Championships aren't usually, but the 2 Diamond Leagues I was in weren't fast Diamond Leagues, which was disappointing for me. But I definitely feel that tactic-wise, I've really honed in that kind of eye and really feeling confident out on the track, and that'll certainly stand to me going into European Champs.
What's the Commonwealth Games like as an occasion when you compare it to some of the European events, the World Championships that you've been involved in?
Yeah, Commonwealths is another unique event in the same sense as Olympics, because it's a multi-sport event. So it's always great fun to be there with an entire team. It has the village aspect that normal kind of World Champs or European Champs doesn't have, simply because it's their own sport. So it's solely athletics at Europeans and Worlds, but Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games, you have a whole village. So you're kind of there with the entire team. So the entirety of Team NI were there in the village, be it a broken up village, because my understanding was that it wasn't finished in time. So we were all on different kind of little campuses. But that's a really fun aspect. So you're in the village with all the different countries and all the different sports. You get to meet people who you don't usually meet throughout the usual racing calendar, which is always really fun. And you kind of get back chatting to some folks that you maybe haven't seen for 4 years because they work in the Commonwealth Games committee as opposed to your own governing body. So that's great fun. And I think, like that kind of atmosphere really captures everybody's sport and ambition and the joy of all of that. So yeah, Commonwealth Games is another little unique situation, and you're around people that you aren't usually around too, in the sense that athletics Team NI is made up of athletes obviously who run for Ireland and athletes who run for Great Britain. So that's another little unique thing. Like, I get to meet Northern Irish athletes who I don't see very, very much, and some people who I've never really met before. And then we're part of our national squad in the Commonwealth Games NI team. So yeah, that's always good fun. I think it's great. It brings everybody together, and personally being from Northern Ireland, I think it really shows the best that Northern Irish has and how progressive the country is. And I think hopefully we're a sign of where the country's going to go. That's interesting, because there's anytime we talk about Northern Ireland, Ireland, the UK, there's a complication there that we're all terribly aware of all the time. But it's interesting to hear that you can actually see that it's possible that everybody can run together, swim together, cycle together, sometimes fight in the ring, and it's all fine. And it's actually not just fine, it's good. Yeah, I think obviously people tiptoe around the topic around Northern Ireland, and I feel like people don't really know how to discuss it. And I tend to try to stay pretty apolitical whenever it comes to my athletic career. I'm here to compete in sport. But I think many aspects of our lives are showing how progressive Northern Ireland is, the young people coming up and what we want Northern Ireland to be. And I feel that whenever we come together as a team, really epitomise the best of what Northern Ireland is. The messages that I'm getting from the whole of Northern Ireland, people who feel they're Irish, people who feel they're British, it doesn't matter. We come together as a team. And I think sport is a fantastic and a great equaliser in that sense too. People put their differences to the side to cheer each other on. And it's certainly something that I love to see. And, all of your differences do get set to the side, and you're excited for somebody going out there and performing at the highest level. And hopefully that can continue into the future. And I think it's a good thing that we come together as Irish and British athletes with a common goal. And it's lovely to see. And in the aftermath, did you get to see many of your teammates, or because you were straight back and trying to get some sleep, was there not much hanging out with them? Yeah, I didn't. Well, with COVID restrictions still kind of being in place, many of the athletes had left the village soon after their competitions. So I didn't get to see quite as many of the other sports. A lot of the other guys who I would know from being on the Irish Olympic team, from other sports like Danielle Hill, for example, who's absolutely mad crack, one of the swimmers. I was looking forward to catching up with some of them, but they had already left the village. I managed to bump into Reese twice as he was on his way to the food hall, but he also headed back home to Northern Ireland pretty soon after. So it's the type of thing that you're like, oh yeah, it'd be nice to catch up with him. But thankfully there was another few of the athletes still knocking about. The Flanagan twins are there, so I spent a good bit of time with them, enjoy their company. So having a good chat to them, and obviously getting to celebrate with Kate because she was still about, was fantastic. To have two female medalists on the track for Athletics NI was absolutely brilliant. So getting to share that with her was something special, and I feel like I'm kind of like a matriarch in the athletics team now. I'm the old one, so to see the younger athletes come through and really excel, to run PBs, season's bests, and get the best themselves out at the championship was brilliant. So yeah, I'm hoping that we get a little bit more of a celebration later in the season. It's clearly something that you really enjoy, the interactions with the non-runners. Like, I presume it's just good crack, but is there like a other element to it as well? Like, do you get nuggets off other high performance athletes in terms of stuff that they use to approach their specific sport with? Definitely, yeah. I think it's fantastic to have a chat and kind of see how they cope and how they traverse the kind of challenges that elite sport throw up to you. As well, with the Commonwealth Games, we also have like a mix of para and athletes on the team, as well as the athletes that I would usually be competing with at, say, Europeans, Olympics. Because in the Olympic Village, we don't get to actually meet the other para athletes. And I personally, like, I get on really well with Ellen Keane, as you guys would know. And it's great because, like, we all share the same similar path. I always find it really fun getting to meet all the other athletes. I was sharing with Eve at the games as well. She was in the same kind of little room as me, and getting to chat to her about even just her plans and ambitions in life and where she's going next. I think we do learn a lot, and that's we're all on the same path and we're doing something very similar. So getting to share, maybe for me to share some of my experience. Some of the girls unfortunately came away from the games with a bit of an injury, or they kind of came in carrying something and were maybe disappointed. And for me to get to share with them, like, I had a similar experience at the Olympic Games last year, and them to see me a year following taking home a medal, it gives them kind of the hope that, okay, this injury isn't going to end me completely. I can build back up and still have a fantastic season next year. And sport is all about the ups and the downs. That's unfortunately the fact of the matter. So getting to share my own experiences with them as well as learning from them. Yeah, I think that's key. And as well as that, all the support staff that we have around us too, because, they've been to more games than I will ever be, probably. That, they've been there for much longer than I will and have been. So learning from their experience too, and just kind of getting an eye and knowledge of how our sports are run is also something that I find really interesting.
You mentioned last year's Olympics there, and I know you kind of kept it private until afterwards that you were carrying an injury going into those games. Did you know beforehand, before these Commonwealth Games, that this was going to be good, that it was going to be a success? Because sometimes they say it's all done in the preparation and you kind of know before you get out there that it's going to be a success. So has this summer basically been, has it all gone to plan? Has your training gone effectively? And did you kind of know it was going to be one that would involve a medal?
Yeah, I suppose I was unlucky with the Olympic Games tearing my calf the week ahead of the games in my very last training session. But coming into this summer and coming into the Commonwealth Games, I did know that I was in good shape. Thankfully, our sport is very easy in the sense that, those outcome measures that you look at, how training's going, specific sessions that may be key markers, are obviously very easy to compare to previous years. And I was hitting training sessions as well, if not better than previous years. I felt in good shape. I had come out with 2 fantastic 800 metre races where I ran 1:59 in both. So that's just a real nice indicator of where the performance is at. And it's also, I take huge kind of confidence from my coach in that feedback. So Helen had been giving me feedback saying, sometimes she was like, I've never seen an athlete train like that. And that's something that's really special to come from an athlete who I looked up to. Anybody who doesn't know that Helen Clitheroe was a fantastic British athlete, an English athlete. She competed at many Commonwealth Games, and I actually competed against her at my first Commonwealth Games. So she's somebody that I've always looked up to in my athletic career. She had a very long career as well. But now to hear her saying, I've never done a session like that, I'm like, okay, this is giving me a lot of confidence too. So I did come in knowing that I was in good shape, and I came in with the ambition of being up there on the podium and actually knowing that I had the capability of being there, which comes with its own pressure. But it's nice to come into a games knowing that you're in shape and that you're ready, as opposed to the Olympic Games where I came in knowing that I had torn my calf the week before. You toe the line and it's very hard to know that this performance isn't going to be what I've prepared all year for, and it's heartbreaking, but I'll give everything on the track on that day. For me to know that everything that I've put in is actually going to come out on the track that day, and that I'll hopefully get the just rewards. It's something special, because quite often the stars don't align like that.
Well, I really hope that the rest of the season goes exactly the same for you, Ciara, because you totally deserve it after everything you've been through. Congratulations again, and thanks a million for joining us. Always great to talk to you.
Thanks so much, lads. Have a good day.
It's Ciara Mageean, a shining star on the track for us in Ireland at the moment. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. Declan Murphy's story of his book Centaur at 1 o'clock. Leaders' questions with Stuart Lancaster at 3. Our retro panel is about losing the dressing room at 4. OTB Gold is Jerry Eisenberg talking about Muhammad Ali, and OTB is live with Nathan Murphy from 7 tonight. Download the OTB Sports app for the fastest access to all of our podcasts across the podcast network. After the break, we're live in studio with Shelbourne's new superstar Heather O'Reilly. First, on last night's show, Joe, Mick, Arthur and Ronan talked about how journalists have evolved in the way they cover sport. Take a look.
What about when you see so-called correspondents of clubs tweeting in all caps when they score a goal and all that?
Yeah.
I don't
sit well with me
I don't know
either.
what to think about that.
No,
anymore.
it doesn't sit well with me either. I'm not saying it does. I don't think this is a new phenomenon. I think people have always liked to be told that the thing they like is good.
But that dismissive tagline of fans with typewriters, nobody's been naive to the notion that the reason people get involved in football journalism is because there's the kernel of that implied support which they would have grown up with, and it's hard to detach yourself from that. There was a sense possibly in years gone by where people would overcompensate to the nth degree almost to hide their passions in that regard. But yeah, the goal thing, I think, is a perfect synopsis of something that really gets my wick a little bit.
Well, it's the inverse. As you said, you'd support a team, you'd become a correspondent, and you'd hide who you supported. Whereas now you kind of laud the fact that I'm covering the team, I'm cheering the team on.
Yeah.
We've scored, here's our boss.
And it's like...
here's what he had to say, that kind of stuff.
It's excuse making when the result doesn't go your way and like having to go with the referee. It's like, this is not journalism ethics as far as I can tell.
Do you think it's down to internet and Twitter?
Yeah, I think you've all raised very good points there. And the internet, as with every strand of life at the moment, centralises these matters. But as much as keeping fans on side, it's also about keeping the club on side, which is something you mentioned, because equally employers don't want to be looking at their correspondent and thinking the fans don't like you, but equally they don't want every other correspondent from all the other outlets breaking a story, getting the briefing, and you didn't because you had to go with the club last week. Like, it would be interesting to see 15 years ago or whatever how the Glazer takeover was handled by correspondents at the time versus how the next takeover of Manchester United, which is seemingly coming down the tracks, how that will be covered. I'd say it'll be markedly different.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB Sports, in association with Cabri FC, are returning with a monster football roadshow. Coming your way, August 17th.
Football legends Michael Owen.
If you haven't got that attitude, then you'll never survive.
Ian Wright.
Lots to look forward to.
Emma Byrne.
That's normal, that's all in the game. Level is gone through the roof.
And Karen Carney will be our guests at Vicar Street
as they look back on their playing days and preview the new 2022-2023 season.
This is an exclusive off-air event and tickets are limited, so don't delay. Go to otbsports.com/events.
And remember that the ticket proceeds will go towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football.
T's and C's apply. See you on the night.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, 11 minutes past 9 this Thursday morning. I'm delighted to say Heather O'Reilly, Shelbourne's latest recruit, is with us in studio. Heather, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
So nice of you to bring the Charlotte, North Carolina weather to Ireland so that we could all bask in a bit of sunshine.
Yeah, I know. Everybody's talking about rainy Ireland, and I get here and it's bright and beautiful. So I'm happy to do that if I had anything to do with it.
How is your acclimatization going? What's that like?
It's good. I mean, I came over here I have two little kids. One's 2 years old and one's 8 months old. So you can imagine for the first week there was some time adjustment problems. It was like a symphony of cries in the middle of the night with jet lag and things like that. But once we all sorted that out, it's all good. And driving's a little bit of a challenge for me right now because I'm used to the other side of the road. So I haven't been behind the wheel too much, which is probably a good thing for the sake of the country of Ireland. But it's good. The squad has been really kind and welcoming, and for them, I think obviously they are in the middle of the season, so to have any sort of addition will take a number of games to kind of get reacclimated and to meet each other. And listen, I don't think it's a secret. Like, I have been out of the game for 2.5 years now. So I mean, part of it for me is getting up to speed and getting my fitness back. I mean, certainly I've been playing five-a-side and things like that and charity matches, and it's not like I actually ran the Boston Marathon a couple of months ago, so I've been staying fit, but obviously that's quite a bit different than like having competitive matches on the weekend.
So, sorry, I was just going to say, like you've mentioned that it's the opportunity to play in the Champions League is a big factor in your decision to return. But it must also just be the competitive factor. Like you mentioned, playing five-a-side, you're playing soccer aid. I suppose there's a competitive aspect to running a marathon, to say the least. But was there just something missing on a competitive level when it comes to the football you were playing?
Well, I think so. I think any or most competitive athletes will tell you, like, when you hang up your boots, like, not much compares, right? I mean, you try to find those things that kind of get those endorphins pumping the same way that like competitive sport does. And I do some TV work, I do some coaching. Of course, I play, in small games and things like that. But I love football. I just love playing. So, but the Champions League aspect, like you mentioned, was a huge determinant of me coming out. I think I've won World Cups, I've won Olympics. I've won a lot of trophies in the U.S. I came over to Arsenal, played for a year and a half, won there as well. So I've done a lot of wonderful things, but I never played Champions League, and it always kind of bummed me out that I never did. When I was at Arsenal, we got third the year before, and at that point, only 2 teams qualified, so I sort of missed out. So it's always just kind of been like this burning thing that I've wanted to do, and I thought when I, hung up the boots and had a family that was probably it for me. But here we are. I felt pretty good, and I wanted to put them back on and give this a go.
So who made contact with who? How did that happen?
I put myself out there, and I wrote a few emails, reached out to Shelbourne, and just said, like, hi, I'm Heather, and here's my CV, and they're like, we know who you are. Like, actually, Noel King was the coach of the national team for many years, so we've faced up against each other through the years. And with a name like O'Reilly, I think back in the day, he had done a little bit of research and just reached out to me to see if I wanted to play for Ireland. Actually, my great-great-grandparents came over in like the early 1900s. So
too late.
Too late. I couldn't play for the Irish national team if I wanted to. But anyways, so Noel and I, we actually have a long history of knowing of each other, actually. And one of my earliest memories is not a great memory of playing Ireland, because Emma Byrne, the goalkeeper that played for a long time, she actually broke my leg in 2003. Nice. I was like on the cusp of making the World Cup team as a teenager and working towards this dream, and then ball comes in, I head it past Emma Byrne. I see it trickling over the goal line into the net, but she came out, cracked my fibula, kept me out of the World Cup. So I had like just like lukewarm feelings of the Irish team there for a while. But anyways, we've rebounded, we've come back.
Did you make peace with Emma at any point?
We did. We're part of, actually, it's funny because Emma and I are part of this group. FIFA is, they're trying to do some positive things, FIFA is, and they're not all bad people, right? And so they've done this pilot program called the Next 90 of former players. I go like this because, I'm no longer a former player. I'm back in it. But so Emma and I are part of this group of like 50 or so former players that are part of it's essentially a year-long furthering your education, business skills, and if you want to become a director of a academy and things like that. So they sort of equip you with sort of ways to essentially transition to your next steps of your career. So we're
within
part
football.
of this group together.
Right.
Yeah, in football, or even if you want to do something outside football. And so Emma and I have, of course, reunited, and we've bantered a little bit about when she crippled me there. But and that was kind of one of the catalysts. So I played in Soccer Aid. I was inspired by Arsene Wenger, who was my manager in that fundraiser. He said, "Heather, you're still very good. You should play football still." And I said, "Oh, well, maybe I'll think about it." And then with Emma Byrne, I was part of this group called the Next 90. So we were together in Zurich, where the headquarters of FIFA are. And of course, we're doing mostly like classroom sessions and boring stuff. But of course, we wanted to get out in the pitch and play like just a fun match. So I played, and again, that gets like the juices flowing and the thoughts flying that like maybe I do want to give this a go again. And so Emma was there when we were like, I literally pulled up the UEFA website and said like, okay, what teams are in the UEFA Champions League? Where would be cool projects? What would be like a fulfilling thing for me to do? And I remember being like, who's SHEL? Because, usually it's like Roma or like Juve. And they're like, that's Shelbourne from Dublin. And I said, that could be kind of cool. Obviously I have some Irish blood in me, and I know a lot of the Irish players. I'm looking right here at a picture of Denise O'Sullivan. I played with Katie McCabe at Arsenal and Louise Quinn at Arsenal as well. So, similar to what England is doing right now in women's football, like, the potential is there for Irish national football to be a contender, and I hope that they have continued success. They're playing Finland, I think, next month to try to have a successful qualifying run for the World Cup. So it was sort of like a project that I was like, listen, this is, I knew that it was sort of not a professional league yet. Hopefully coming over here will bring some attention to the league, and what the women have done at Shelbourne FC has been spectacular, winning the league last year. And they work in the shadows a lot. I mean, literally, like, they work and then they play in the evenings. And, you know, we're getting to the point now where, women's football is professionalizing. And yeah, I think that they deserve to be seen and appreciated for the athletes that they are.
How has the reality of playing for Shelbourne differed from the expectation?
Good question. I think, I think like whenever I come over to Europe, I realize that like everybody knows the game, right? Like as in these women have been watching the game ingrained in the sport, whether it's watching Premier League or whatever it is, supporting your local team. And for me, that's different. And in America, like there's a lot of girls that play sports and you have a lot of good little athletes, but they don't like love the game. They don't like talk about like, oh, did you see Liverpool like Leeds over the weekend? Like, and these women are. So they have like a deep appreciation for the game. So I would say like when I'm on the pitch with the women, there is, you can tell that they're behind the curve in certain ways, but ahead of it in others. Like sometimes, like we even went up to Sligo on last weekend, and some of the finishes and the technique and the understanding of the game is quite good. So I think that has exceeded my expectations. And then in terms of differing, I think that like I have been privileged to have like a long professional career in the U.S. where I've been paid to be a professional athlete for like 15 years. And just, you know, there has been, I think, little steps along the way of what does professionalism mean. It's not only, you know, money, you know, a check twice a month. It's
recovery time.
Yeah, it's recovery, it's diet, it's a lot of things that sort of go into it. So that is a little bit different to me and still has a little ways to go, but the potential is there. So I would also say that people are more enthused about me being here, I think, than I thought. I think at the end of the day, like I have been retired for 2.5 years. I'm an older player. So like I didn't really know how that would be received.
We say experienced.
Yeah, exactly. Vintage. Better with age, like fine wine. So no, I think that like the reception has been great. I mean, obviously for me to be here with you guys has been super fun.
In your head, how long a project is this for you? Is it strictly this one short season, or are you thinking this might be a year, this could extend? What do you...
Well, the Women's League, you know, it just goes until November 6th is the cup final, right? So that is sort of a date that I'm kind of keeping in mind. Obviously, we'll see how this Champions League run goes. I mean, I'm a competitor, right? And like, I'm a winner. I like to say, like, I've won a lot of things in my career. So I'm going over to Slovenia next week and with the expectation of winning 2 games. Like, that's just how I'm built. And then after that, we'll be faced up with some other Champions League opponents, and we'll just kind of like see where this goes. So I think, I mean, it's definitely a short project for me. Like, but I'm also learning a lot about Irish sport, and our chairman is this guy named Andrew Doyle, who's a really exciting guy, and he is doing some great things at Shelbourne FC and has a lot of ideas for the future that I think would be interesting to hear more about, and seeing if I want to get involved in that aspect. So I'm up for it, certainly. It's a little early on to say that right now, though. I've only been here for like 2 weeks.
No, totally, but it's just interesting to see what the range of potential outcomes are. Do you want to be a manager at some point? Is that your long-term goal?
Yeah. So I think I'm at the point of my career where I'm kind of testing the water in different ways. I've been kind of on my pathway of getting my badges, my coaching badges. Like I have my UEFA B badge. I was hoping to maybe look into getting my UEFA A badge when I'm here, and that just sort of opens some doors. I do some TV and punditry work as well, but I do think that I want to be a manager. I just love this game a lot, so I obviously can't play forever, and so leading people and working with teams is a lot of fun. And I don't necessarily just think on the women's side. Like I think. So actually right now I'm teed up to be coaching an under 15 boys team in the U.S. starting in like late November when I get back. And I think that that's interesting because I think that, you know, everybody looks at women's players assuming that they'll coach women, and like it doesn't really have to be like that. So I'm looking forward to these boys, on the line and getting them appreciating a female manager and seeing if I appreciate that.
Well, listen, Heather, we wish you the very best of luck with it. It's a sensational story that Shelbourne have been able to get somebody who has 3 Olympic gold medals and a World Cup, and it's great that you're so interested in the league to bring that to bear, and I'm very interested to see what might come of those conversations with the Shelbourne chairman in the long term.
Yeah, I am as well. And looking forward to this weekend. We play Treaty United on Saturday at Tuckle Park, and it's sort of a send-off to the Champions League. So hopefully as many people can come out as possible to see us off. And join in this exciting movement right now.
Best of luck. Thanks a million for joining us. And I think there's going to be a huge crowd at Tolka on Saturday afternoon. Under 16s go free. Season ticket holders can bring somebody for free as well. And overall reduced ticket prices. They want a big crowd at that game as well. Right, so we are actually celebrating women's football, of course, at Vicar Street. It is next Wednesday, August the 17th, in association with Cadbury FC. Emma Byrne is going to be there, hopefully not breaking any legs. She's going to be alongside Karen Carney, Michael Owen and Ian Wright. Obviously, the proceeds from the evening are going to go towards supporting Irish women's grassroots football. OTBSports.com/events is where you can get your tickets for that. T's and C's apply. We will see you on the night. Now, some of our YouTube comments alive and well this morning regarding our advanced mark debate. Generally, I think all in favour of me. Owen, you'll agree that...
read them out there. Let's have them.
I obviously won the debate. I hate the mark, but no point talking about the 2017 final, etc., because 90% of the discourse was football is dying. Dublin are going to win 20 in a row. How do we stop Dublin? You reap what you sow, says Owen Cleary.
What does he mean by you reap what you sow?
I don't know.
Like, the 2017 All-Ireland final was immediately considered one of the greatest games of football we've ever seen, and I don't know what that means.
Dobb says there are 3 marks at most per match. On the list of blights in the game, it's fairly low down. It's a pity the GAA are forced to make up rules to counteract managers who don't care about ruining the game. Well,
yes, exactly. That's my major issue, is with the heightened sense of appall that is out there around the advanced mark that it has destroyed the game or something like that.
Jack Nulty says Clifford took advantage of the mark. It's not his fault, but we'd better see him score without it. And as if he won't be able to, he would. Don't like it, but not his fault. Wonder if Galway Comer would people say?
What would people say if Comer did it? Like
the same thing. I don't like it. I just think that it slows the game down. That's my fundamental issue here. O'Toole 1905 says fair point that Derry beat Tyrone, so sit higher, but there's no question for me that Derry are maxing out as it is and can't get to an All-Ireland. Tyrone are far, far more likely All-Ireland contender. I don't think it's no doubt. I think that it'll be interesting to see where they go to next. Michael says Desi wasn't the correct appointment in the first place. I don't know, really. Like, he'd managed that group of players at underage level. It was the succession plan. It looked like exactly what you should do. It looks like what well-run counties and organisations, they have a plan in the eventuality that somebody... It's like what Kilkenny have done, and if it's the wrong person, we'll find out. But ultimately, they decided from a long way out that they were going to put a plan in place, and that's the right thing to do. That looks like good management.
Yeah, no, it does. And I think that there's probably a little bit more to be proven from his perspective as well, on Desi's side of things.
Thomas O'Connell says, why did Monaghan keep getting ranked above Kildare this year? A similar championship run, and Kildare whipped them in the league.
We're using league results to prove...
Or to predict what's going to happen next year?
Or to predict, yeah. I see the point. Kildare are definitely a good place. I wonder, there's always a bias based on the fact that they get tanked by Dublin, and would Monaghan have got tanked by Dublin this year? Maybe, to be fair.
Owen has the green and gold tinted glasses on this morning. It's the weather for it, I guess, says Clinchy. Kerry seems to be nice this time of year when the weather's good for the 3 days a year and it doesn't rain in Kerry.
Yeah, get on down for those 3 days. It's Puck Fair at the moment, of course. It's day 2.
Yeah, the goat trapped in the cage.
Yeah, David Clifford.
What?
You just refer to the goat.
Oh, okay. If Owen's point about being so easy to defend the ball, the big full forward, was true, then why did Donaghy cause so much damage throughout his career?
Because that was before innovation really came into defensive coaching. They found a way around Donaghy and they succeeded in stopping Donaghy.
Did they find a way around Donaghy?
Yes, they did.
The ball just going into him, start being shite.
They got him on the ground and they gouged his eye out. That's what they did. That's what...
there you go. And that they didn't actually... That should have just been refereed.
Yeah. No, they definitely found a way to stop Donaghy. Like, it was a fairly blunt instrument approach, which worked very well for Kerry, with an outstanding full forward and a brilliant set of forwards around him. And then,
but hang on. Sorry, if Donaghy had been fully fit at the same time as James O'Donoghue and also Gooch when Gooch went to 11, that would have been unstoppable. But the stars didn't align enough for them to all be fully fit for long enough for us to see, because Donaghy wasn't just a high ball into him full merchant.
No, he wasn't, of course not.
That's the thing.
But then we're only talking about one specific part of his game here. Like, so this is not a debate on Donaghy. This is the debate on the Route 1 ball doesn't touch the ground thing. Like, and this is the whole point. It's a tiny little part of the game.
I don't know. Was that Route 1 stuff not like they just got bad at it because he was so good at it that Kerry didn't get good at, like...
No, because Tyrone were like, we can actually just double mark a player. We don't need to go 15 on 15.
Yeah, I mean, maybe then that leaves space further out the field and they weren't innovative enough. But anyway, okay.
Possibly.
Mark Lawrenson, read the famous people in the studio, has to be a better contender than John O'Shea. League titles and European Cups, plural.
We forgot to mention Graham Souness as well, who's been in the studio.
Yeah. But I still think Heather O'Reilly probably trumps it with 3 gold medals and a World Cup.
It's not bad, is it?
No, pretty impressive character. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Ger has a Bogger accent and has been putting on his normal voice this whole time, says Ray Orr.
There were 2 like Ger characters that he does, which I'm sure people that regular watchers of the show. There's like the mysterious Bogger, who obviously appeared this morning, and then there's like the high pitched squeaky voice guy that he does as well.
I think that
those 2, like, if we could do like a sort of Richard Cooper-esque thing where you just do a sketch where you interview those 2 guys, I think that could be quite funny.
I mean, maybe. I love the way you always, like, draw attention to it. It's a great comic foil thing where you're like, oh, look at you, you're making a joke there. I'm like, thanks, Owen. That's fucking great.
Yeah, because what is rare is wonderful.
Done.
It's like, oh my God, there's actual some humour coming from that side of the studio for once.
Hey,
brilliant.
Shots fired. You're getting brave now. Tommy says, serious questions, lads. Where is Adrian? Who's your daddy Barry? He hasn't been seen since the Tailteann Cup final.
There you go. I think you've answered your own question there. Massive celebrations in Mullingar that night.
He
hasn't been seen since.
He's milking John Heslin's cows for him. That's what one of the benefits of winning a trophy is. You get local lads to come and do your work for you for the next 3 or 4 months. And Adrian's up on John Heslin's farm doing whatever it is John Heslin wants him to do, and he won't be back until John's finished with him.
Who's your daddy indeed?
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's Dan McDonnell on the football show last night. Good luck.
I was taught, Dan McDonnell recently made a really interesting observation which has stuck with me. He said this a couple of years ago. He was saying that he reckons we, broadly speaking, I mean there's 6-7 years between some of us, but we are the last generation who are rounded sports fans. And what he was saying was, when we grew up, and in my house we had 2 channels, and maybe you'd 4 or 5 in yours, but when we grew up there was no internet and there was the TV and there was a degree of, well, I'll watch what I'm given, because the alternative is I'll have to read books or be bored. And so that means that we, from the age of about 5 to the age of almost 20, we ended up in June watching Wimbledon, because when you turned on the BBC it was on, and then in April you'd watch the Masters and the World Championships in snooker because it was on, and you'd watch GAA and rugby and football because you were starved of 24-hour sport and they were just what were on at certain times. And so we have this more rounded grasp of sports, whereas these days if you're a Messi fan or a Conor McGregor fan or pick your poison, you just have endless content on the internet, on YouTube, and you can just deep dive, and it never even occurs to you, you don't even know what month Wimbledon's on. You don't even know the World Snooker Championships are on, because you're not turned on BBC in the hope that there's something good. I thought it was just a fascinating point, and probably like quite sad for sport.
I'm wondering, it was just dawning on me there, like if like television's coming to Ireland in the 60s really, in earnest?
62, yeah.
So like there's only probably, are we kind of saying there's like 2 generations of that maybe?
And the younger ones are rubbish.
I think it's probably true, but it's not. I don't know. I'd be only guessing. I don't know what the feeling is now. I mean, I presume by virtue of the fact we were talking earlier about the market, that by virtue of the fact these things are still on, like Wimbledon's still on BBC and things, that there's obviously people watching. Like, is it?
That's a fair point.
Like, like it still obviously has some grasp, but I do understand completely what George's saying about when it felt central for 2 weeks, because it was it. Like, God almighty, like the excitement around, I know you were talking about it earlier on the news round about like 2002 World Cup particularly. It's like a month of games, constantly. Oh, it was immense. It was nothing like it.
But sports that aren't followed impassionately, I know you're talking about general sports fans, Joe, but like that sort of reflexive recall that people of a certain age have for sports like cricket, Formula One, that kind of thing, tennis, obviously, snooker, in a way that the next generation, like myself included to a certain extent, don't have, because...
Are you trying to position yourself as like,
I'm saying like
the young cool peer?
Picking Formula One and cricket, for example, as sports that had been terrestrial, but when I was growing up were behind the Sky paywall, or increasingly behind the Sky paywall. So during that nexus point where demand met with popularity, where Formula One, the 90s probably hit an all-time high, snookers had their moment probably in the 80s, and in cricket, I don't have an Ashes memory in the same way a lot of people older than me do, but cricket just never appealed to me because it was on Sky and I didn't really see it. So that all sports element did dwindle as the years went by, but I do think the paywall was a big part of that also.
Mr. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent is here in studio. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Joe. I'm glad. It's good to feel welcome. It's good to get a good welcome like that.
Hey, Irish football. We're flying. We're dominating Europe. They can't stop us.
What can go wrong?
Air travel.
This is what we should do. We should declare everything fixed on the back of a couple of good football results. You know, that's the history of Irish football. It's like 1990s. Got to a couple of World Cups.
Yeah.
The game here is absolutely flying. Yeah. Facilities, stadiums, all these things we could do. Youth development. Nah, like we'll just keep qualifying for tournaments. That's what Shamrock Rovers, all these teams are going to qualify for group stages every year now. We can just get on with our lives. We've reached this state of like, this is the norm. Don't need to do anything. Like, dump those strategic plans, FAI people. We don't need it.
Air travel and television coverage is all that can stop us now.
They haven't. There's been nothing put out yet about the FAI creating the atmosphere for this to happen, to be fair. So maybe they're learning from the mistakes of the past. You know, that it's not because of them. You know, it's because of some pretty good young coaches, and there is some good stuff going on, and there's some good people on it. And to take sort of like, you're sort of used to gallows humour, like in this beat. So you know, it's sort of, you're conditioned to it, but you do have these runs of like good results, and you see teams on a reasonable stage doing well. And to me, it more so drives home the argument of, God, imagine if we were doing things properly here. This could be great. Like this isn't completely out of reach in the way that European football is structured now. Like, there are chances there for clubs, and like, these are good nights when they do happen, even if you can't always see them on TV.
Good to hear about, though.
It's good to hear about. It's the type of thing you like to wake up to in the morning, not necessarily see. Obviously, you like to be told about it. It's like good news. Like, someone tells you about an old friend, you know, they got married and is happy. You know, that's lovely. You know, I didn't have to go to the wedding.
There's a certain romance in not seeing it and hearing about it.
Yeah, it's like the 20-yard shot becomes the 40-yard shot over time. Although there was like what I'm told, and I don't know what the numbers are, but there was a record number of streams last night on the LOI TV for this game, because it's probably the biggest game I can recall that has ended up in recent times. It would have been quite common probably in the 2000s, but in recent times, like the biggest game that for a while looked like it was going to be subject to a blackout, but it wasn't in the end.
I'm sure people well aware at this stage, Shamrock Rovers 2, FC Shcuppi 1. It was 2-0 until about the 93rd minute, so it was a relatively calm finale despite the late Shcuppi goal. So Rovers guaranteed European group stages in some form or another. It will either be Conference League or Europa League, depending on how they get on against Ferencváros in 9 days' time. First leg in Budapest. We're talking about the Hungarian champions. We're talking about 3 million guaranteed, which is no small matter. The performances against Shcuppi, the scorelines both look comprehensive-ish. Certainly the aggregate's very comprehensive.
Yeah.
What would you say about Rovers?
Yeah, no, it's 8 days' time. It's Thursday week, but it's like they've been. I think the thing that struck me about the game last night was, and I would have mentioned this in my report, it wasn't stressful.
Yeah.
Like, if you think of, say, people maybe who dip in and out of this, and they might be aware of like Dundalk beating Bate Borisov that time, or maybe Shamrock Rovers in Belgrade that time, or sort of isolated big wins, you sort of associate them with like diving tackles or, you know, heroic saves, or there's always that element of living on the edge and you've beaten the odds. And it wasn't like that at all. Like, it was more professional, it was more ruthless, it was more clinical. Like even last Thursday, the first leg, Shamrock Rovers were 2-0 up at half time, and in the ground you're thinking, geez, this is looking pretty easy. Now, as it happened, they were pummeled for 25-30 minutes of the second half. Could easily, that's where they had a little bit of luck in this tie, that the Alamanis made some very good saves. But Sheepy were put down to 10 men with 5 minutes to go, and Shamrock Rovers scored to make it 3-1. It was just clinical. There was that small bit of, this is the type of thing that is done to Irish clubs elsewhere, and people talk about, oh, these are clinical, you know, these are seasoned operators, like you can't do that. And last night was a bit like that. They absorbed a bit of pressure for like 5-10 minutes, and then they managed the game pretty well. And look, this is, I've written about this and probably been wrong to some degree. I was worried about the age of this Shamrock Rovers side. They're quite old. Like, their average age is over 30 of their starting 11 a lot of these games. The goalkeeper, even take the goalkeeper out of it, it's like 29 territory. So it's not like a team of sort of 22, 23, 24-year-olds, which maybe the Dundalk team in 2016 might have had quite a few of them. There's more guys who've been around the block a bit more. And while that you can see the pros and the cons of that, and at times against Ludogorets in the Champions League, you're thinking, God, they maybe just need a little bit more spark or energy here or something. In this scenario, they just managed the game extremely well in both legs, and they sort of advanced clinically and professionally in such a way that it wasn't a typical Irish club story where it's like, this is an amazing fairy tale or something. It's not. It's more like a professional club doing sort of professional things, which is a progress in itself.
We talk about the League of Ireland as a young man's league. A lot of young players, the profile of most teams being quite young, and as you said, Rovers are more towards the late 20s, 30 variety in many cases. Is that a concerted decision or just the way it's fallen?
It's the way it's fallen. There's a couple of factors for it. I think there's probably, and I've written about this before, probably quite a few of the players who've gone to the UK in the last year. We've spoken about this exodus of League of Ireland players to the UK. I think a lot of them previously probably would have been, like Shamrock Rovers would have gone after some of them. In fact, they were chasing a couple of them, like Dara Burns, who went from Pats to MK Dons. The goalkeeper, Ed McGinty, who went from Sligo to Oxford. He saved a load of penalties in a shootout last night, or one penalty last night in his debut. They're the type of players that they would have gone after and probably haven't been able to secure them. They've lost one or two players as well that went. Danny Mandrew, who's in that age bracket, he went to Lincoln in the window just gone. So probably in recent years, they probably have... they've hoovered up a small bit of the experienced talent in the league. They picked up a couple of the players from Dundalk when things went a bit mad there. They brought Richie Towell home. There is an element of they've probably hoovered up some of the best talent around. There is no doubt about it. But they do have young players on the fringes, like Idaho Amaku, who's scored last night, who does this mad stat where he's actually scored more goals in Europe than he has in the League of Ireland Premier Division. He seems to just come on in Europe off the bench and score big goals late on. But yeah, it's more, like, there's no doubt that they have used winning back-to-back titles and being the foremost team in Ireland. We're going to be in the Champions League next year, lads, to probably take a lot of the more experienced players in the league and take them. But I do think the profile would be younger if they'd been able to get some players who just happened to have gone away.
I heard Gav Cooney say this morning on AM that Dundalk, for instance, had a bigger budget last year.
They did, yeah. Now that's because the Dundalk budget last year, 2021. I mean, it really was like sort of this mad sort of, I don't know, like a Wolf of Wall Street sort of party where everyone loses themselves. Like they got, like Dundalk, where they were post 2020 when they got to the last team that got to the group stage, which is almost forgotten. Like, people remember Michael O'Neill and Stephen Kenny. They forget that Dundalk, behind closed doors, played Arsenal twice, and it was a bit lost because we were all lost at that time in our lives. And it was great, it was on TV, but there was probably like 50 matches a week on TV or something with everything. So that was lost a bit, but they basically splurged all that money on players afterwards, like, you know, and they paid mad money. They were paying sort of players, a couple of players come in on sort of, you know, $3,500-4,000 grand a week and stuff, and they weren't very good, and they were overseas players. So
Rovers
it wasn't that Rovers
now.
Yes, it wasn't that Rovers had a small budget then, to be fair. It was just that Dundalk had such a madly inflated one.
Fair enough.
But Rovers, what they did, they they came along, and rather than necessarily, and they're offering good wages, but they more so offered long-term contracts. Like the Dundalk were offering lads a year on huge money, including some players maybe that they lost. Rovers were like, well, we're not going to offer you that in some case, but we'll offer you a 4-year deal, and you're 26 and you're looking to get a mortgage. Who are you going to sign for?
Dundalk.
Well, hang on. How much money are you talking about for the year? I think a couple of sort of level-headed characters, their decision has been vindicated.
So what do we know about the Hungarian champions? What chance have Rovers here?
Yeah, it is difficult to glean, really.
Dan, if you're going to come on here and you haven't watched Ferencváros at least 40 times in the last year, you're at nothing.
Listen, I mean, it's true. Well, I could pretend I have. And would you even know?
I would. The listeners may know.
Yeah.
Go on, what's the word that
So Ferencváros have ended up here because this Champions route is a new thing that's being created. Sure. And this is the thing that League of Ireland sides of like 10, 15 years ago, and Stephen Kenny even spoke about this last week, they'd almost be a small bit envious that he had a very good Dundalk side, say, in 2015. They lost to Bati Borisov 2-1. I remember I was at both games, really close, and then you're done.
Yeah.
That is the end of your European year. Now you get a second chance. So Shamrock Rovers obviously were knocked out of the Champions League in the second round, and they come into this. Ferencváros got further in the Champions League and lost to Karabag last night. So they've arrived into they've got the backdoor route a little bit later. Yeah. So that's the form we're going off. They drew 1-1 away with Karabag. You think it's a good result bringing it back to Budapest, and they were 3-0 down at home, and they got a late consolation. So, I mean, I'm going to conclude from that they're not great at the back. You know, you're thinking we got at, but a couple of years back, you try and look at sort of how clubs have fared against teams from that league. Like Bohemians went and played Ferencváros, who wouldn't be as strong as Ferencváros, but they pushed them very close over 120 minutes in a one-legged tie, went to penalties. So I think, you know, they're at the beginning of their season. Rovers are midway through, which is no doubt is a big fitness advantage for Irish clubs at this time of the year. So I see no reason for them to be intimidated by it. They are a stronger side, but it's a little bit of a free hit because Rovers don't have the pressure of failure if they don't do this. Like, they've sort of achieved their target for the year now, but they have the chance to strive for a small bit more here, get into a more glamorous competition where the money is slightly better, although not dramatically better, in such a way that if you lose, you're not going to be in tears on the pitch.
Either way, Europa League or Conference League starts 8th of September, so we'll be seeing Rovers playing European matches right through into the autumn and winter, and there'll be 3 big games in Dublin. I saw your colleague Paul O'Hare in the Mirror. He was saying Rovers have already inquired about the Aviva Stadium, which is understandable. For instance, if they make Europa League, they'll be sharing the stage with Manchester United, Arsenal, Roma, Lazio, and on we go. And naturally enough, if you land a Premier League team, Aviva full steam ahead. Yeah,
like the precedent has been shown that you can play. Actually, Dundalk showed it. You can play one game in one venue and 2 games in another if needs be. You know, there used to be a thing that you pick one stadium and you stick with that all the way through. You know, I think you can be a bit more a la carte with it now. But yeah, that is something that's on their radar. You know, they can look at that route, and it is true. Like, they now have this. Like, to me, it's kind of a weird calendar year this year, obviously with Qatar at the end of it, and the Champions League weeks, the European weeks, but we know them almost as Champions League weeks. They're going to be like very condensed into periods. To have an Irish involvement in that is what you strive towards, and it'll allow people to probably get to know some of the stories of the players in this team a bit more.
I think the real big win here is that the country gets to know Rovers properly now. They'll be on television. There'll be a sense of journey about this. The European games capture attention like no other. That's just the reality.
It is.
When I think of Dundalk games and their pomp, I think of the European games far more so. So if they were to get Manchester United at the Aviva Stadium, is there any way we can prevent Manchester United fans from going?
God, I feel like that's the cultural experience I don't want to experience. I don't want that.
I mean, I look forward to your article condemning this.
But you can't condemn people. That's not the way to go at it.
That's the League of Ireland way.
No, yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do, Joe. We send angry mails to people about not covering stuff. Like, that's clearly not the way to handle it. Yet it would be completely exasperating as well.
It'd be terrible.
It would be. It would be like Rovers have enough that they could definitely manage a certain amount of it, and they'd be able to get the singing section and stuff and get their people in the way they could organise. Like, a lot of the Man United fans they obviously have to give something to. We're speculating a game that hasn't even happened. It may not happen, but it's fun. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, you'd still hear the Rovers fans in the corner. But the United fans.
No, you wouldn't. United fans would just be. They'd just be on their phones, Joe. Yeah. You just hear this. They'd be like, They wouldn't. Like, you'd actually have the travelling fans could create a bit of noise, but the Rovers fans would. I think they'd win the volume battle. They wouldn't have the volume of numbers. They win the volume of terms of battle. Something like that's what I'm saying. Something like Arsenal is like they're obviously. Yeah. They're a huge fan base here, but it wouldn't be the same.
You'd have the awkward bunch in the middle who support United, but probably should support Rovers for the night crowd. It would. And
you know what? You'd have op-ed pieces in news sections of paper of people sort of trying to examine what this means about us. Like one of the first games I went to Dan,
if you're not in prime time talking about this, you're at nothing.
Well, one of the first games I went to, and it was probably a formative experience in my life, was going to Pat's playing Celtic in 1998 in Tolka Park. And again, what happened in this instance was Pats went away first and it got a famous 0-0 draw in Parkhead or Celtic Park as what's the Paradise, to give it its full term, and an amazing result. So then it came back to Tolka the following week, and I travelled up to that game from home, and like there was loads of people in the crowd, most of the people in the crowd cheering for Celtic.
Yeah.
And it drove me crazy, to be honest. I think it probably it stirred a sort of a certain teenage anger in me. I was like, and I understand the Irish affection with Celtic, and I've subsequently been to Celtic for big European nights, and I totally get it. Yet there was still part of me there going, like, these are at the time, particularly, like, these are all Irish lads pretty much playing for Pats. The whole idea of like Celtic is like this Irish club in Scotland that sort of represents the hardship of the Irish people there, and you're sort of here cheering for a lot of players not from Ireland against them. And I was sort of like trying to analyse this, and I decided then, I'm going to become a League of Ireland nut at this stage. This is what happens.
Right there, we've got your intro to the piece.
I have a different perspective on life now, Joe, but it was one of those moments that I would probably, I'd love the story of a tie like that, but I'd probably partially would probably hate the event. I have to be honest.
The noise around it,
I have to be honest,
but regardless, I mean, group football, it's brilliant. So just to note this, I suppose, or touch on it, the TV coverage and airports have been much discussed. On the airport situation, Rovers flew to the game last night from Sheahan due to, quote, staffing issues at the airport. Now, Scoopy themselves complained because they had to fly to Sheahan last week for the first leg. St. Pat's had to fly from Knock. It's a fair trek out to Knock Airport, and they couldn't get home till Sunday, which meant the Shelbourne game was cancelled. So there has been issues here to the fore. CSKA, Sofia and Ludogorets both did get their charter arrivals and departures from Dublin. So the word from Stephen Bradley was, we're really disappointed with the situation. We find out again that Sofia are flying in and out of Dublin. Serious questions have to be asked. How the Irish teams can't do this, and it seems every team that comes here can do it. Serious questions need to be asked of the people making these decisions. It's not acceptable. I understand, he said, the travel chaos is for everyone at the moment, but it can't be that both Bulgarian teams are flying in and out of Dublin direct, and we're going out through Sheahan and have to go back through Sheahan. Pats and the trouble they're having, it's not right. There needs to be serious questions asked of who's allowing this to happen and why it's happening. Stephen, so say all of us.
The broader aviation situation has been a nightmare, and to be fair, it's even probably made it hard to cover some games that people would like to have gone to. Certainly, trying to logistically look at some of these trips was very difficult. And these are big games, so it's probably not just even the TV coverage that has been has been one of the things that's been lost a little bit this summer. Now as it happened, Rovers ended up getting back into Dublin because of fog in Sheahan. So that was the postscript to this. So and they did actually, Sheahan was the previous round. They did get to fly from Dublin for this game, but they were coming back into Sheahan, which was Stephen Bradley's grievance. So they travelled back through the night, got to Sheahan around 4 or 5 in the morning, and there was heavy fog, and they were diverted to Dublin Airport. So the fog came in and saved the day.
Do you
in
think
the
this
end
annoyed Stephen Bradley even more?
I don't know. I think they were quite happy to get back. I think they were more like.
Would it crossed his mind? So why couldn't we have flown into?
Yeah, I know. And where did this fog come from? Is this
staffing issues? And suddenly we're in Dublin.
But what you want is more fog. That's basically what you want, more fog around Sheahan. And obviously you see then that Sheahan are offended, Sheahan Airport are offended by people having a go, and it's not that. Bradley's point, to be clear how it was phrased, was it's more so the point that Ludogorets and CSKA Sofia were able to go into Dublin, and like, do the Bulgarians have some magic password or something?
Might it just depend which charter company you're paying?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. Like, Rovers had a nightmare trip to Ludogorets in the previous round, and they were 3-0 down, and they feel it really cost them. Like, everything went wrong with that trip. Their hotels had to move hotels. Like, it couldn't have gone worse. And like, your preparation, if you're an Irish club generally in a lot of these games, the games where you're punching up, like, your preparation needs to be on point.
No, sure.
And that stuff kills you.
Absolutely. So they have a 8-day turnaround, as you say now, for Budapest first leg. The €3 million that they get from UEFA, is that pretty much swallowed up with logistics and charter?
No, it won't be. I see 8-day turnaround. The whole point is to see they play Derry in a very important league game on Friday, and that was Bradley's frustration about.
He wanted that moved.
Yeah, and that couldn't happen. And like,
does he not have a point on that, by the way? Why shouldn't the league be trying to move Rovers games to help?
So I think the thing with that is they've had games moved already, but I think the league sort of gave a message at a particular stage that when you get to the sort of third round onwards, you sort of need to try and fulfil fixtures. Rovers weren't really trying to get the game off. They were trying to get it to go to Saturday or Sunday, but I don't think Derry were budging with that. And Derry's point was, well, Shamrock Rovers, you did play an FAI Cup game against a non-league side 3 days after a previous European tie, but you didn't want to play us, as in, are you picking and choosing your games? And Derry will look after Derry, Rovers look after Rovers. You'd like to think there's some kind of, if you set some policy on paper that says any team that's in Europe, you get that week. That sounds great, but then you're going to get to November and have around 20 games to play.
Fair enough.
So
the day there's a collegiate atmosphere in this league is the day it dies.
That's things have changed. Like Rory Higgins, well, would Shamrock Rovers have moved that game for us if it was the other way around? And you end up down that road.
One of the lads outside, who'll remain nameless, he out of interest texted his Rovers United supporting cousin and asked him, if Rovers draw United in Europe, what jersey are you wearing to the stadium? The reply was, Rovers F United.
There you go.
It doesn't hurt that United are so hateable at the moment. Even their own fans might go.
I think that's part of the problem, actually. Yeah, it's not
like Roy Keane in centre midfield there.
No, it's your one chance to sort of abuse someone that you've been doing it remotely for a period of time.
Fans have waited years to boo Harry Maguire.
Yeah, and this is their chance. We want to get on board. Like, if the Australians can do it, why can't we? To go back to your point, sorry, I didn't really answer it about the 3.3 million. No, I think
make some profit.
Like, when you think about it, like, Rovers already made 2 million this year from Gavin Bazunu. The sell-on clause of Gavin Bazunu going on.
How much longer are they still getting?
As I said,
every time he makes a save at the moment, I think there's got to be some money for Rovers.
There's someone that Rovers now hired a staff member who just sits at a desk on the corner on Bazunu watch. And it's like people with royalties from a book. Like, every year they chase the Bazunu check that they get.
Does someone walk over and ring a bell?
Yeah, it's like Bazunu. What's that? Like, it's like when someone does a tip at a bar and someone rings the bell. It's like, they hear that sound, like, oh, what's Gavin done now?
I feel like Gavin made a save at training. There's 10 grand.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that now, since he's gone to Southampton, I think there was more the City deal that had all these little clauses in it. But they made 3 million quid out of Bazunu in the end.
Good.
Which is incredible.
So look, they'll make some money out of Europe.
They will. No, they will. I think the whole message last night was very much like Shamrock Rovers went to group stages in the past and they probably squandered it. They have a little bit more, as much as the club still needs to balance the books. They've been doing well in recent years and still sort of recording some losses, but the whole plan was, as much as they would not say it explicitly, they felt they were on the path towards group stage football being there for champions such as them. Okay. And now that they cross that threshold, they're in a position to do some good things, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Have you subscribed?